Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Town Council meeting for December 17, 2019. For those of you who may be interested, I believe this will be our last formal meeting for the calendar year of 2019, so we'll see you in the first of the new year after the meeting tonight. We will begin the meeting tonight. We'll ask the clerk to call the roll for us.
Mayor Marshburn.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Behringer.
Here.
Councilmember Matthews.
Here.
Councilmember Dellinger.
Here.
Councilmember Singleton.
Here.
And Councilmember Vance.
Here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. If you will, join me in honoring our country and stand, please, if you're able to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. It's my privilege this evening to invite to the podium Reverend Travis Tobin, who is the minister of the First Baptist Church of Garner, and he happens to be my pastor. So, Pastor, would you come up, please, and lead us in an invocation this evening? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's pray together. Father, we pause this evening for one reason, and that is to acknowledge our need and our dependence upon you. Father, I pray, Lord, for this session this evening, that, Lord, for our mayor, Lord, for our council members, our town officials, for each one that has been given the task of giving leadership to our community and making decisions, Lord, that you would grant them wisdom beyond their own natural ability. Lord, you teach us that if we lack wisdom to ask. And so, Lord, we would acknowledge the need of your direction and your guidance for us as a community. And so, Father, tonight, may you make your presence known. May you give direction and wisdom in all that's said and done. Lord, equally, I would pray for our community that you might continue to provide protection and provision. We thank you for law enforcement, for our first responders. Lord, would you provide your protection on each of them, as well as our governing officials, and just bless each one of them. And Father, I'd be remiss that if I would not personally mention my thankfulness for this season, when I recognize the need for a Redeemer found in the person of your Son, the Lord Jesus Christ. And it's in his name we make this prayer. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Reverend Tobin. Okay, if you're following along in the agenda, you know that this portion of our meeting is what we call petitions and comments. This portion of the meeting is to receive comments from the public on items not included in the agenda. Citizens should sign up with the town clerk to speak prior to the start of the meeting. The council is interested in hearing your concerns but may not act or deliberate on the subject matter brought up during the petitions and comments sections. Topics requiring further investigation will be referred to the appropriate town officials or staff and may be scheduled for a future agenda. And so I have at least one person who is signed up. And by the way, as you come forward, we do ask that, consistent with our meeting procedures, that you limit your comments to about 3 minutes so we can expedite the meeting and hear others who may want to be heard. I have a sign up here for Mr. Ricky Pierce. Mr. Pierce, would you come up at this time? Please state your name and address for the record. Please, sir.
My name is Ricky Pierce. I live at 1810 Vandor Springs Road. I'm a lifelong citizen of Garner. Wednesday morning, November 27th, I received a call from a friend saying she had heard the Garner's Christmas parade had been canceled. I told her to give me a little while and I'd be back with an answer. I immediately thought I knew why. After visiting a friend who owns a business and is usually up to date on what is happening in Garner, I made one phone call to someone I knew would tell me the truth, and my guess was correct. I proceeded to Town Hall, where I was directed to Rick Mercer, Town Communications Officer. He was standing with two other individuals and Interim Police Chief Joe Benz. After introductions, I asked the reason for the parade's cancellation. After about 30 seconds with no real explanation, I finally said, so the reason the parade is being canceled is because the Sons of the Confederate Veterans are participating. At that point, Interim Chief Ben stated that there had been some social media chatter, and looking at me, he said he and his department were incapable of handling the threatened disruption. Town Manager Rodney Dickerson then appeared, and when I questioned him, he appeared a little miffed, as if I didn't need to be questioning him in his decision. From that point on, my statements and questions were answered with, "That's your opinion." Well, let me tell you what my opinion is. The town of Garner has a severe leadership problem. If our police chief and his department is incapable of protecting the citizens of our town, and the town manager and this elected board is going to be bullied into making decisions by cowering down to a social media hate group threatening disruption of a public event, then we need to make a change. We need people on this board who will stand up for its citizens. I'm sorry, but your excuse of making your decision for the sake of our safety of our children is a little lame. Garner is part of a mutual aid agreement with other cities in our county. Additional officers could have been requested. The state could have been approached for help. The social media hate groups could have been told if they showed up with disruption on their minds, they would be arrested. Cowering down to groups like these just lets them know they can get their way by making threats. What do you intend to do about the 3rd of July celebration? When they want the panel at our Memorial Park removed that references our Confederate dead, what do you intend to do? When all the statues have been removed and there are no more, is it then that you will let them burn the books? I believe that's what Hitler did to the German people prior to World War II. The Sons of Confederate Veterans don't teach hate, they educate. The ones doing the threatening are the hate groups. I want to know, and my fellow citizens want to know, who on this board is going to take a stand and say no? Who has the backbone to do that? Shame on each of you for using "we've got to protect our children" as your excuse to cover your cowardice. I think you made a decision that would play well with the party you're all affiliated with.
Mr. Pierce, I hate to interrupt, but I'm going to ask you to wrap
appear
up
to be
in the
villains in
next
the
few
public
minutes.
eye, and they won't ask to participate again. To quote Mr. Dickerson, that's my opinion, and I'm almost through.
Okay.
In the near future, if towns like ours continue to cower down to hate groups, I can see my grandchildren asking me, "Papa, why did you let this happen?" My answer will be, "Children, I did everything I could. I just couldn't get enough other people to take a stand." What are you going to tell your grandchildren? Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward and exercising your right to speak to us, Mr. Pierce. Are there others who wish to speak at this time? Petitions and comments? This is the only person I had sign up. Okay. Hearing none, we will now go to the adoption of the agenda. I will ask for a motion from council.
Move we adopt the agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no, and it's so ordered. Consent agenda you have before you. There are several items on the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve consent, or is there an item that anybody wishes to change or?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull item 2 from the consent agenda, and if we could move that to the end of new and old business.
Okay, so you're suggesting we discuss that this evening and put it at the end of
Yep.
new and old business?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Town Manager, is that consistent with any other items that, we don't have
Yeah,
any
that's
other
fine.
items that would go there, is that right?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
I don't have anything else.
Okay, you've heard and you put that in the form of a motion. I believe council needs to officially approve that.
I move that we move item 2 of the agenda to after all items of new and old business.
Okay,
Second.
second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, and it is so ordered. Thank you, Mr. Dellinger.
So then I move that we approve consent agenda items 1 and 3.
Yes, okay, you're right.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you, Mr. Singleton. Okay, we'll now go to the next item of business, which, let me see, would be public hearings. We have, I believe, 4 of those this evening. Mr. Attorney, I guess now would be a time for me to open this with some instruction that we
Yes,
have
sir.
here. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, for the various hearings that we have this evening, on the advice of counsel, should remind you that there are rules governing these hearings that are required by law that we must follow. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, which means it is more formal than other public hearings. It is a fact-finding hearing, and appropriate sworn evidence must be presented as the basis for whatever decision the town council makes. Opinion testimony is not appropriate factual evidence unless the witness is a recognized expert on the subject. Therefore, opinion testimony concerning such things as impacts on land values, traffic safety, or noise levels should be avoided unless the witness is a recognized expert based on training and experience. Also, hearsay evidence which is relating what some other person said or wrote and petitions of support or opposition cannot be considered. You're permitted to ask questions of other speakers concerning their factual testimony. Council members are only allowed to receive factual information about the cases in this hearing and are not allowed to discuss the cases outside of this hearing. Please respect time limits on speakers and other requests to minimize repetitive testimony. And at this time, I would ask you to come forward and be sworn by the clerk if you are expecting to give witness testimony in any of these hearings. If you'll just come right to this area over here, please.
Raise your right hand. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I will call our first case, CUP SP 1918, Advanced Concrete, and Miss Allison Jones, our planner, will lead off the presentation. Thank you, Miss Jones, for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and hello and good evening to everyone else. My name is Allison Jones, and I'll be presenting the next 3 cases on the agenda tonight. First is Advanced Concrete, Conditional Use Permit, CUP SP 1918. The applicant is Advanced Concrete. The owners are Greenfield Ford Associates, LLC. The location is at 4500 Waterfield Drive. The tract is about 6.2 acres. We had a planning commission meeting on the 18th for this project, and now we're here before you tonight. The overall community character, its predominant use in the area is industrial flex. This project is located within the Greenfield South industrial area. There's a car sales lot located several parcels to the east of this project that fronts Greenfield Parkway South. Although the UDO did not require conditional use permits without a rezoning, meetings were not required. 17 property owners were invited to a neighborhood meeting held at Garner Senior Center on Wednesday, October 2nd. One person attended the meeting. As I mentioned before, the tract size is 6.2 acres. It's one lot. The use is going to be light industrial flex space. For the zoning MXD 1 or mixed use development, there's no minimum lot size. The setbacks are 30 feet for the front. There are no setbacks for the rear and side, and the corner setback is 30 feet. And here's a picture of the site plan. Building elevations. The building will be constructed of split level elevation of brick, veneer, and precast stone and corrugated metal. There will be 10 roll-up doors on the western elevation. There's no open space required for this project as it is a non-residential project. Landscaping. The tree coverage is being met with the undisturbed vegetation in the buffers and environmentally sensitive areas of 10%. The perimeter buffer is 15 foot wide on the northwest side of the project that abuts an undeveloped slot, excuse me. This buffer can be reduced to 7.5 feet under the condition that the north side maintains the evergreen buffer that's currently there. And the street buffer is 25 feet horizontal to separation only, adjacent to Waterfield Drive. Proposed lighting that is required has been met with LED fixtures. There's zero uplight and low glare, and a warm white light exhibiting color temperature of 4,000 K. The inspections department, together with the fire department, have reviewed and preliminary approved this project. Parking is based on the square footage of the building, which is 13,088, of light industrial flex space, which is one space for every 500 square feet, and office, which is 6,912 square feet, which is one parking space for 300 square feet. They're required to have 49 parking spaces, and they're proposing 50. There is no FEMA floodplain. However, the Neuse River riparian buffer is in the front of this parcel, but there's no development being proposed in any environmentally sensitive areas on this project, site. Advanced concrete site is not located within any watershed protection area. This is subject to water quality requirements for nitrogen and water quantity for the 1, 10, and 25-year storm events. This development proposes a wet retention pond. The stormwater wet retention pond will provide treatment for nitrogen and any water quantity requirements at this site. Water and sewer will be provided by the City of Raleigh. The connection of water will occur through existing water lines on Waterfield Drive, and the connection to sanitary sewer will be connected on existing sewer lines on Waterfield Drive as well. Sidewalks will be installed along Waterfield Drive as a part of this project. The back-up curve to back-up curve pavement cross-section for Waterfield Drive is complete. No widening is required for this project. After looking at the Garner 2018 Garner Forward Transportation Plan, we find that no recommendations are needed for Waterfield Drive. So with the installation of sidewalks, the plan may be considered consistent with the recommendations of the Garner 2018 Forward Transportation Plan. After reviewing the Parks and Recs Open Space and Greenways Master Plan, we find that there are no additional recommendations for this project area. So as proposed, this project may be considered consistent with the Parks and Recreation Open Space and Greenways Master Plan. After sufficient review of the project and plan revisions, now as proposed, the project conforms to the UDO so long as the two standard conditions are met and one site-specific condition is being met. Prior to the receipt of approved plans, engineering fees must be paid to the town of Garner, and prior to the issuance of the first building permit, all water and sewer fees must be paid to the City of Raleigh. And the two site-specific, is one site-specific condition. The annexation petition was submitted to the planning department prior to this meeting, and the issuance of the first building permit, all of the fees must be paid to the City of Raleigh. The Planning Commission reviewed the request on the November 18th meeting, and by unanimous vote, the Planning Commission confirmed staff's findings that CUP SP 1918 Advanced Concrete is in conformity with adopted town plans and policies. Please refer to page 48 of your packet for the motion to either approve or deny this project.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we recognize council members for discussion, questions, I will ask council if any of you have had any ex parte communication in regards to this particular project that potentially could result in your recusal is the word I'm trying to say, and/or would affect your ability to make an impartial decision. If so, would you please indicate that at this time? Okay, hearing none. Let's see, we'll start down on this end with Mr. Dellinger. Mr. Dellinger, do you have any questions, comments?
No comment.
Okay. Mr. Vance?
Was there any opposition to the plan, but from the public?
No, sir.
You said how many attended the meeting? I couldn't hear you too well.
One.
Okay, Ms. Behringer? None? Ms. Singleton?
Well, I'm just curious, it seems like we're a little out of order the way we do this. Don't we usually have the proponent or the developer make a presentation? Or we ask them if they want to make a presentation, then opponents, then we ask questions? Are we a little out of order?
Well, I was thinking that we would go per each presenter, but perhaps maybe so. I don't know. What do you think, Mr. Attorney? Should we hear?
I would let the developer go ahead and speak now.
Okay. Yeah, all right. Well, thank you, Ms. Jones. We'll get back to you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Didn't mean to leave you out.
Oh, you weren't leaving me out.
Okay.
I'd like to get the questions out ahead of time as well, so that's fine.
Okay.
I'm Tom Johnson. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Williams Mullen at 301 Fayetteville Street, Suite 1700 in Raleigh. And I'm here on behalf of the applicant. As we get started, I would like that for the application and the associated documents that were submitted to be admitted into evidence in support of our application. And I will say up front too, we agree with the conditions that staff has suggested. We consent and agree to those. If I may, let me first start off by just having Stuart Presnell, who's the owner of the site and is listed as the applicant, to just come up and give an overview of the site and what this is all about. So I'll have him come up right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your consideration of our project. In 2001, Advanced Concrete was founded in Greenville, North Carolina, and in 2015, we moved our corporate headquarters to Jones Sausage Road in Garner. We had approximately 60 employees at the time, and we're right around 100 employees now. We've grown substantially over the last 3 years. We have a 10,000 square foot building now on Jones Sausage Road, and moving into this facility will allow us substantial growth. We expect to add another 15 to 20 employees over the next year if we can. So we're really excited about this project. Garner has certainly been a great fit for us over the last 3 years, and we really hope that Garner can be a good long-term fit for our corporate headquarters. So any questions?
Okay, I believe we have should we hear from anyone else or?
Mayor, I don't know what your usual procedure is. Sometimes you allow questions by council at any point. Sometimes you want to hear from the proponents as well as any opponents.
I believe customarily we have asked questions from the applicant and proponents, and then we ask questions of others afterwards.
Okay.
And I'll be more than happy. And I mean, I think this one's pretty straightforward. We really haven't had any opposition. I will say Ms. Jones did an excellent job in her staff report showing how we've met the requirements for the conditional use permit. So I've got my team here, but in lieu of just calling each one of them up, given the fact the staff report's so thorough, I'll just make them available for questions or that you may have, that council members may have about the project, about the staff report and any of the other evidence that is there.
Okay, and while you're standing there, if anybody has a question for this gentleman, before we recognize anybody.
And I'll be
else
glad
from-
to answer any questions from
Sure,
From a
okay,
legal point of view, if there's something that's more specific, I can have one of our team members speak to that.
okay, thanks, sure. Any questions? None?
Comment. Just I'm glad you got up and spoke because it's good to see Garner businesses growing in Garner. And so I'm glad to see that looks like a great site. I drove out there today just to see the area, and it's a good fit for that area, and it's good to see you're growing. It's always great to see. That's it.
And that's absolutely the case. They're really proud to be in Garner and to be expanding their facility. So, and it is a great location for them for sure.
Seems to be, okay. Any other comments? Okay, Any council member want to hear further from the applicant, any of the support people he has with him? None? None? Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Okay, I believe it's time to ask for those who may wish to speak to the issue that have any reservations about this particular project. Right there, okay. Are there any who came wishing to speak about it? Now would be the time to come forward. Okay, hearing none. Did anybody have any questions for Ms. Jones? I think we gave an opportunity for that. Is that right? Okay, all right. Okay. Having heard the information and the evidence before us, I would ask council, what is your desires regarding a motion at this time?
Mr. Mayor, in regards to CUP SP 1918 Advanced Concrete, find it consistent with the town plans and ordinances, and I move that the council accept the staff statements regarding plan consistency in Section 5 of this report as our own, and finally, application meets the 10 permit criteria, Section 3.14.d, and therefore approves CUP SP 1918 Advanced Concrete.
Second.
Singleton?
Mr. Mayor, just as a point of procedure, did you open and close that hearing?
Probably didn't formally.
Yeah, probably need to do that
Yeah,
formally before any vote's made.
all right. The hearing has been open, and hearing no further testimony, I will now close the hearing. Is that proper? Okay. Bear with me, folks. I'm still a little bit new at this, so we'll get it straight and get it done correctly. Okay, the hearing's been closed. A motion has been properly made, and I believe I heard at least a couple seconds from Phil and/or Ms. Behringer, whoever you want to record. Yeah. All right. Is there are there other council members who just desire to make any further comments or have any questions? Hearing none, I'll call for approval of the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
If there's any opposition, no. Okay, and it is so ordered. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming in this evening. Okay, the same preliminary information that was given at the beginning will apply to all of these hearings, so I won't repeat those, and I will recognize Ms. Jones again for the second presentation. Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. I will be discussing White Oak Northwest Medical Office Building, conditional use permit, CUP SP 1919. The applicant is Garner White Oak Northwest MOB, and the owners are White Oak Northwest Associates. Location is at 45 Cabela Drive. The tract size is 2.88 acres. The Planning Commission heard this project at their November 18th meeting, and it's before you tonight. Community information. The predominant use is mixed use with retail sales, restaurants, and banking. There are 2 hotels being proposed in this area as well. You can access this site from Jones Sausage Road, turning onto Eagle Wing Way, or off of US 70, turning to Cabela. A neighborhood meeting was not required for this project, as this site is a part of a plan development that was approved during a public hearing process beforehand. As I mentioned, the site is 2.88 acres and is proposed use of medical office. The zoning is service business with minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet. The front setback is 35 feet, the rear setback is 15 feet, the side setback is 10 feet, and the corner side setback is 35 feet. And here is a picture of the proposed site. The building will be constructed of majority brick and metal panel. There is no open space required for this project, as it is a non-residential project. The tree coverage, the requirement of the 10% tree coverage being met with all replacement material. There's a 7.5-foot rear buffer being provided to the north where development abuts the railroad tracks. The western and eastern property lines are designated for parking areas, and so this is not, which is a part of the master plan, so no landscaping is being required for this area. The street buffer is 15 foot in width and is adjacent to Eagle Wing Way and Cabela Drive, where the trees are being planted every 40 feet. The proposed lighting meets the lighting ordinances as well as meeting with staff recommendations for LED fixtures. All the fixtures have zero uplight, low glare, and warm white lighting, exhibiting color temperature of no more than 4,000 K. And just to mention, this project, White Oak has specific lights, and so they're supposed to be colored in bronze color, and they are being providing bronze light poles as well. Inspection Department, together with the Fire Department, has reviewed and preliminary approved this project. Parking is based on the square footage of the office, one parking space for every 200 square feet. The building is 45,915 square foot in size. They're required to have 230 parking spaces, and they are providing 230 parking spaces. However, 177 are being provided on site, and they will be sharing 53 spaces with the neighboring proposed hotel. Just to add, these parking spaces will be constructed with this project. There are no FEMA designated floodplain on this site, and there's no environmentally sensitive areas on the site. White Oak Northwest Medical Office is a part of a commercial subdivision plan that is not located with any watershed protection area. This site is subject to the water quality requirements for nitrogen and water quantity for the 1, 10, and 25-year storm events. A wet retention pond was built as a part of the overall master plan for the subdivision to treat impervious surface from all the parcels being developed on the site. A wet retention pond will satisfy all the nitrogen and water quantity requirements for this site. The site will be served with public water and sewer. Connection of water will occur through taps off existing water lines on Jones Sausage Road, and sanitary system connection will occur through existing lines on Eagle Wing Way. There's no additional frontage improvements required along either Cabela Drive or Eagle Wing Way. The 2018 Garner Forward Transportation Plan does not have any recommendations for Cabela Drive or Eagle Wing Way, as both these streets are private roads. Therefore, the plans may be considered consistent with the recommendations of the 2018 Garner Forward Transportation Plan. A review of the Parks and Recreation Open Space Greenway Master Plan revealed no recommendations for this project area. Therefore, this project as proposed may be considered consistent with the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Greenways Master Plan. After sufficient review and plan revision, staff's finding this project now as proposed conforms to the regulations of the Unified Development Ordinance, so long as the two standard conditions and two site-specific conditions are being met. The standard conditions are the fees for the City of Raleigh, the water and sewer must be paid, and also the engineering and inspection fees must be paid too as well. The two site-specific conditions are a cross-access agreement will be recorded, and also prior to the occupancy, certificate of occupancy, a shared parking agreement between the medical office and the proposed hotel shall be recorded as well. November 18th, the Planning Commission met about this project, and by unanimous vote, the Planning Commission confirmed staff's findings that CUP SP 1919 White Oak Northwest Medical Office Building is in conformity with the adopted town's plans and policies. Please see page 57 of your packet for motions.
Just for the record, Ms. Jones, I believe I should have opened the public hearing. I'll do it after you present it, but thank you very much for your able presentation. Okay. Are we subject to hear from the applicant at this point in time? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Good evening. My name is Josh Teague. I'm the president of a company called RES Partners. My address is 9113 Cameronwood Drive in Charlotte, North Carolina. Happy to be here this evening. Thank you all for taking time to listen. I'm certainly excited about this medical office project and becoming a part of Garner. It's a project we've been looking at for quite some time. And the site that Ms. Jones just outlined for you, the site and the size of this project were very purposeful. And I'll give you just a couple of minutes to let you know how we operate. We're very different than most developers that you probably hear from because we're not just a developer. When it comes to healthcare, healthcare is extremely complex. And in addition to being a developer, we're also the largest provider and the most sophisticated provider of data and analytics for healthcare real estate in the nation. So we partner with a number of health systems and healthcare providers in order to help them determine where to place facilities, how many physicians to place in those facilities, all based by scientific data. And we have a very highly accurate and sophisticated process with which we do that. Now that's how we arrived at this site over time, and we actually analyzed it in comparison to the greater Raleigh-Durham area. And our process, just so you understand, when we look at the greater Raleigh-Durham area, we analyze every single commercial intersection in this marketplace. It's probably over 15,000 potential intersections where you could develop something. We look at every single one of those. We're able to forecast 5 years into the future how many patients will come to the doors in 2024, whether it be primary care, OBGYN, vascular procedures, orthopedic surgery, neurology, more than 40 different subspecialties. We're able to forecast with about 94% accuracy, again, 5 years into the future, how many will walk through the door. Now, it's the same way that retailers utilize demographics and other information, but we multiply that retail information, the demographics, that they follow how much each of us buy, where they expect us to live, how we pay for those goods that we purchase. We multiply that times healthcare information, which every time you go to the doctor, it's coded with a number for an ear infection or a broken arm or potentially several different numbers. We're able to tie those series of numbers to the same profiles of people who buy goods. And so we understand where the retail information lives, and then we're able to extrapolate from that where those patients will live in the future as well. So that's a very high-level explanation. It's much more detailed than that, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. But that's how we arrived at this site. It was actually one of the top 3 opportunities in all of the greater Raleigh-Durham area, in large part because geographically it's quite a ways from most of the hospitals of the providers here in town. And so they've always viewed Garner as being a little bit of a challenge geographically for them to get to, but that has changed over time. And it's a testament to the growth of Garner and the population that's coming in here and continuing to grow, and the projections here in the industry that's coming into Garner that now has a number of providers interested in providing services, which is much needed. And so the facility of 46,000 feet, very purposeful in the size of it, as I've said before, that will house a number of providers, including primary care providers, as well as multi-specialty providers. And so we anticipate starting construction the second quarter of next year. And as I said before, we're very pleased to have the opportunity to become a part of the overall makeup and framework of Garner. As a quick closing, we'd just like to add that we'd like to ask that the documents presented by Ms. Jones and submitted herein be considered for evidence, and we're also in agreement with the conditions imposed by Commission. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr.
One for Mr. Teague. Just to confirm, I know it's a condition, but there are 53 additional parking spaces that'll be shared with the property beside it. So that's all good. Y'all are fine with that? The property owner's fine with that? Yeah, the adjacent property owner, everybody's okay with that?
Yes, and that's a good point. So that doesn't always work. The reason why it works here is because it's a hotel that's next door. And so actually in the legal documentation of the ground lease and the declaration for White Oak, that site next door to us is required to be a hotel. It can't be developed as anything else. And we can't be anything other than an office building. Reason being because we're very symbiotic uses. Our operational hours are during the daytime hours. The hotel is opposite our hours overnight. And because of that, we're able to share parking. And so that has been widely discussed with Commission and agreed upon by both Commission and property owners as well. But thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Teague? Any?
No question.
Okay, thank you, sir,
Thank
for
you.
the information. Is there anybody else for the applicant that wishes to speak at this time? Okay. Are there others who wish to speak to this issue who may have other opinions about this particular project? Hearing and seeing none. Okay. I believe it's time to close the public hearing, which I will do, and I will call for a motion. Council, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Mayor, I recommend find consistent the town plans and the ordinance and approve CUP SP 1919 White Oak Northwest Medical Office Building. I move the council accept the staff statements regarding plan consistency in section 5 of this report as our own and find the application meets the 10 permit criteria in section 3.14.d and therefore approve CUP SP 191-19 White Oak Northwest Medical Office Building.
Thank you, Mr. Vance. Motion properly made, and Ms. Behringer seconded the motion. Any other discussion by council or questions, concerns? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor of approving this project, this motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, so ordered. Thank you very much. Ms. Jones, are you still here? Okay. I believe you're next up, and let's see, I think I can call if you're ready. I will officially open the hearing as relates to CUP SP 1926 Waterfield Ridge Apartments. And Ms. Allison Jones is first up. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Last one for tonight.
Yeah.
Waterfield Ridge Apartments, conditional use site plan, CUP SP 1926. Sorry. The applicant is Site Collaborative. The owners are Waterfield LLC. This project is located 101 Waterfield Ridge Place Drive. The tract size is about a little less than 29 acres, 28.3 acres. The Planning Commission heard this project at the November 18th meeting, and we're before you tonight. The predominant use in this area is industrial flex. The project is located within the Greenfield South industrial area. There's a car sales lot located north of the project that fronts South Greenfield Parkway and the US 70 exit ramp onto Greenfield Parkway. There was a neighborhood meeting for this project held at Garner Senior Center on Monday, November the 4th at 6:30 in the afternoon. 5 people attended. The questions were basically asking about what the building would look like, and I believe that was the majority of the questions were about the appearance of the building.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
About the appearance of the building. Well, the building, excuse me. The acreage is 28.38 acres. Their proposed use is apartments. The current zoning is an MXD1 or mixed-use development. There's no minimum lot size for MXD1 zoning. The setbacks are 35 feet for the front, 25 for the rear, 10 for the side, and 25 for the corner. And here's an overall picture of the site plan. The buildings will be constructed of modular brick and stone, and as well as siding. Open space required to have 10% of the 28 acres, which is 2.84 acres. They're providing 52% of open space, the equivalent of 14.7 acres. The tree coverage is being met with the undisturbed vegetation and the required buffers and the environmentally sensitive areas, which total about 52% tree coverage. The perimeter buffers are being met with existing plant material that will remain undisturbed. Staff will evaluate the existing plant material to make sure it meets the screening requirements and intent of the ordinance. The street buffer is 15 foot wide, adjacent to the South Greenfield Parkway and Waterfield Ridge Place. The trees are being provided every 40 feet in both of these areas. Proposed lighting meets requirements of the lighting ordinance as well as staff recommendations for LED fixtures. The fixtures have a zero up light, low glare, and warm light exhibiting a color temperature of no more than 4,000 Kelvin. The inspections department, together with the fire department, has reviewed and approved these plans. A Parker analysis of the surrounding municipalities led staff to accept the requirement of 1 space per bedroom plus 1 space per 10 units for visitors. The required is 403 parking spaces. They're proposing 427. The site does contain FEMA floodway. However, there's no development being proposed in any environmentally sensitive areas. Waterfield Ridge Apartments is a multi-family development site that is not located within the watershed protection area. The site is subject to water quality and requirements for nitrogen and water quantity for 1, 10, and 25-year storm events. This development plan proposes a stormwater wetland. The stormwater wetland will provide treatment for nitrogen and any water quantity requirements at this site. The site will be served by City of Raleigh Water and public water and public sewer. The connection of water will occur through taps off existing water line on Waterfield Ridge Place, and the connection of sanitary sewer will occur on existing line on South Greenfield Parkway. Sidewalks will be installed on Waterfield Ridge Place and South Greenfield Parkway as a part of this project. Curb and gutter is existing on Waterfield Ridge Place and South Greenfield Parkway. The 2018 Garner Ford Transportation Plan does not have any recommendations beyond what the UDO would otherwise require for Greenfield Parkway or Waterfield Ridge Place. Therefore, with the addition of sidewalks, these plans may be considered consistent with the recommendations of the 2018 Garner Ford Transportation Plan. A review of the Parks and Recreation Open Space Greenways Master Plan revealed no plan recommendations for this particular area. So with the fee in lieu park land dedication, this project as proposed may be found to be in conformity with the Parks and Recreation Open Space and Greenways Master Plan. After sufficient review and plan revision, staff find this project as now proposed conforms to the regulations of the UDO, so long the 2 standard conditions and the 3 site-specific conditions are being met. The engineering department must receive the fees, and the City of Raleigh must receive their fees for the public water and public sewer. And the site-specific conditions are, prior to the issuance of the first building permit, the annexation petition must be submitted to the planning department. Prior to the issuance of the first building permit, the fee in lieu for parkland dedication must be paid to the town of Garner. And prior to the first building permit, a fee in lieu for the portion of sidewalk that's not being constructed at this time during this project must be paid to the town of Garner. The Planning Commission reviewed this request at their November 18th meeting by unanimous vote. The Planning Commission confirmed staff's findings that CUP SP 1916 Waterfield Ridge Apartments is in conformity with adopted town plans and policies. Please refer to page 68 of your packets.
Okay, I assume the applicant is here and wants to make a presentation.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Thank you,
Good
Mayor.
evening, sir.
Hello. My name is Graham Smith, landscape architect with Site Collaborative. We're the applicant on this on behalf of the ownership group, and including Mr. Ron Gibson, who could not make it tonight due to a family medical issue. Mr. Steve Simpson is here representing the ownership group as well as our entire consultant team if we have questions. So trying to follow the lead of others, we would propose that the information that Ms. Jones presented would be accepted as documentation for for this case, and we do consent and agree to the conditions that Ms. Jones put forth. We're comfortable with that. Just one or two acknowledge that we've been working through this project. It's 28.38 acres, 11.4 is disturbed. You saw a lot of it as being undisturbed, and there's some certain environmental conditions there, but essentially roughly 17 acres are not being touched on this site, and 268 units will be provided, and it'll be a mix of studio, one-bedroom, and two-bedroom apartments in this facility. We did have 5 people turn out in public meeting. There were a few very simple questions about the architectural style, some of the amenities and things like that, as Ms. Jones noted. So other than that, we're here for questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Council members, do you have any questions for this gentleman?
I have questions.
If you would, Mr. Smith, come back for a minute.
And this may be directed to you or to the planning department. My understanding from looking at our UDO that the MXD1 is an obsolete planning. Can you speak to that and how that's relevant? And also in the same, I guess, explanation, explain how this is a mixed-use development if it's only residential.
So mixed-use development is an obsolete district, meaning that no other parcel can be rezoned to mixed-use development. This particular project is not a mixed use, however, the entire area is a mixed-use development. This particular parcel is not just mixed use, but the entire area in the Greenfield South development area is mixed use.
Okay. Ms. Dellinger?
Oh, I have other questions.
Okay.
So under section 4G with the minimum use categories that are listed under that section, this is not an individual site zoning, is that what I'm understanding?
Correct. When this Old South Greenfield was zone MXD, when it originally came some years ago.
Okay. Other question, are there any, let me make sure this is in order. So there's another piece of property owned by this same company located across this northern part of the boundary. What are the future plans for that, if you know at this time?
At this point, there are no plans. It's been undeveloped for quite a while, so don't know.
So you don't know if...
I do believe there's some environmental conditions on that site, but I haven't looked at it.
Other question. Are there any plans or inclinations to incorporate any workforce affordable units into this? And what kind of price points are you looking at right now as you open? And what do you project out for your studio and one bedroom? And
Perhaps Mr. Simpson, who will be on the operations side, but I don't believe, we're looking at studios, one bedroom, so the smaller size units is what we've looked at least from a unit mix, but I'll let Mr. Simpson talk about rental.
I'm Steve Simpson, 7101 Creedmoor Road, Raleigh. Yeah, we are, our rents will range from $900 to $1,450. Not, they're smaller, therefore the rents can be lower. And that's one of the things that we've looked at other projects around Raleigh to make sure that see what's trending. And from what we've gathered, millennials are wanting smaller, and that way their rents are staying lower. The big 3, 1,200, 1,500 square feet units just aren't, they're just not being built anymore.
Okay. Other questions?
yes.
So this gentleman, go right ahead.
With regards to construction practices, do you have any incorporated sustainability in terms of materials or promote lower energy consumption, charging stations, solar power, anything like that?
We don't have solar power. We're looking at the possibility of charging stations.
This property it doesn't, I drove out there today.
Right, yeah.
And it doesn't appear to be a walkable community to anything in in walking distance.
Right.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Does it have any access to public transportation in any way?
I don't believe the bus service comes into the park.
Not current.
Not correct.
And is it attached to any greenways that you know of? We're revising that plan now, so.
I don't believe there are any.
Yeah, just my general concern with the property, the project is its location. It's isolated nature of it from kind of the core Garner and not being accessible to commerce and these types of things. But that's all the questions I have.
Okay, while this gentleman's here, anybody else on the,
I can answer a couple of Mr. Dillinger's questions in a different way. The ownership group of this, Waterfield LLC with Mr. Gibson, one of the developers of this entire project. They've owned this property since the mid-'80s. So one reason I think this piece of property was developed for apartments like the one on the other side of the intersection is because of the slope of the land. You can't build a warehouse on land like that very well, and because of the waterway, they're only using about 40% of the land roughly for development. So that's some of the issues they face. And yes, it is out there in an industrial park, but I think we've realized through time, I mean, they're building apartments and residential out at RTP also. So the way people view those types of, well, one time we're just going to be commercial centers, now have changed that in residential. But your point about walkability is a very good point. That's a good point.
It's another contributing factor over time to traffic because you have to drive to get everywhere if you live out there. So.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question, if I may. In reference to the style of the apartments that are going out there, I see that it's a unique style. Are there any other apartments that are like that in Garner right now?
No.
Okay, where are there some? Close.
Well, we're doing some condominiums, basically these same units in Raleigh that are being sold in the $180,000 to $350,000 range.
Where in Raleigh?
Over by Wake Med, right next to the campus. And they're being built to attract, you know, the folks who work at Wake Med, first responders, folks like that. We're able to, because of the way we've designed these with interior quarters, key fob access, we're able to do that and keep the rents down because at property over by Wake Med, we have them do podium parking, and concrete is expensive. Because we can do surface parking, we're able to bring those same urban amenities to a suburban setting.
And looking at where you're situating and based upon information that's been provided thus far, in reference to public transportation, there's a certain market you're targeting.
Yes.
And that market is?
I mean, we're after the folks who, you know, when you say targeting the market, we're working with the same folks, first responders, folks working close by. You know, I'm not quite sure.
The younger generation you're targeting?
Yeah, the millennials. Yeah, they're the ones who are looking for the smaller units to be able to keep their prices down.
yeah. Did you say those are under construction now in Raleigh?
Yes, yes. We just quit blasting.
Oh, okay. All right. Any other questions of either one of these gentlemen while they're standing before us? Anybody?
And in reference to transit, help me here. In reference to transit, that's basically need basis and not where the need is for transit, where the request would be for transit. If it's something that staff can answer now, we can just hold it, and we're good to go. We're okay. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Do you withdraw that question?
I withdraw that question.
Okay, yeah.
Was there a traffic impact analysis done on this project, or was that not necessary?
A traffic impact analysis was performed on this project, but there were no recommendations.
Is there any data on that?
I can
Was it
give you
presented?
that. I can send you the TIA to you.
I mean, I think that should be
Well,
consistently provided during the presentation of residential.
Have a gentleman here, I guess.
Yes,
Yeah.
Joshua Ranke, 5808 Farrington Place, Raleigh, North Carolina, registered professional engineer in the state of North Carolina and head traffic engineer at Ramey Kemp and Associates. So we did a traffic assessment essentially that looks at the trip generation for this site as well as the traffic around the site and sort of the infrastructure in place. So this is something that, due to the proximity of the ramps for Business 70, the turn lanes that are already out there provided, you've got, 2 through lanes along Greenfield, 2 exiting lanes. It doesn't look like there would be any capacity issues for this site. The trip generation is relatively low. You've got 91 total AM trips, 116 PM. And then due to the type of, this is where it's beneficial when you have different land uses out there, you've got a decent number of land uses that the trips would be coming in the morning, while these trips would be going out and kind of complementary there. So you have the apartments on the flip side of the ramps that would be sort of getting away from that area and hopping on the ramps. But you've got turn lanes at the ramps. You've got turn lanes at essentially the driveway there. The infrastructure is in place there, and it's a relatively low trip generator.
Any other questions, council? Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Okay. Anything else from the applicant at all? Okay. Anybody else wish to speak to this in favor of this? If not, we'll ask if there are any other testimony to be offered in regards to the project in opposition or otherwise. Hearing and seeing none, I will, Ms. Jones, do you have anything else here? Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing and ask council for a motion.
Mayor, I move that the council approve CUP SP 1926, the Waterfield Ridge Apartments, find it consistent with town plans and ordinances, and move the council accept the staff statements regarding plan consistency in section 5 of this report as our own. Found the application meets the 10 permit criteria in section 3.14.d, and therefore approve CUP-SP-19-26, the Waterfield Ridge Apartments.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Singleton, and I heard 2 seconds. So any further discussion from council or questions? Hearing none.
Mr. Mayor?
Excuse me? Yep.
Mr. Mayor? I'd just like to say that I think it's time we start looking more carefully at developments like this as they occur and in aggregate, especially taking into consideration things like walkability, connectivity, price points, any types of incorporation of workforce affordable housing. We've got Amazon coming here, $15 an hour, but if you break those numbers down, a $980, $1,000 apartment is still not affordable. And have money left over after taxes and transportation and all these other issues. Also caution that we're in the process of completing our 10-year comprehensive parks and recreation plan. So the greenways and those things are in flux. We need to make a conscious effort to incorporate new developments into these greenway plans. And also just in transportation in general. So I would not approve this project as is. I would not be in favor of it, and that's my comment.
Okay, and I might just say, Mr. Dellinger, I appreciate your comments. I'm sure this is something that we can discuss further in an upcoming work session and have some more discussion with our planning department regarding your concerns. Okay, thank you. Motion is properly before us, I believe, and it's been properly seconded. Did you get the second on that, Madam Clerk? Okay. If there's not any further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no?
No.
Okay, it's noted. Do I need to call? No, okay. Okay, so the ayes have it, and this project is approved. Thank you all for your attention here this evening. Appreciate you
I just
coming
have
in.
a quick question. Mr. Simpson, what is your home?
We went to
School together.
Oh,
It was a
yeah.
long time ago, wasn't it? Good to see you.
Everybody doesn't look quite the same as they did in high school, huh?
Oh, he does.
It's exactly the same.
Oh, that was the right answer, I guess. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Small world.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next item is slightly different. I believe this is a rezoning and a special use permit. Is that right? Mr. Bird, I'm going to open this hearing and ask Mr. Bamford to make his presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. This is a planned residential development application. It has two components. It has a conditional rezoning along with a site plan master plan. Name of the project is George's Landing. The total size of the project is 145.85 acres. The property has frontage on US 401 or Fayetteville Road and also on Simpkins Road. This is in the northwest part of Garner. The Planning Commission did review this case at their meeting on November the 18th and did recommend approval. There was a neighborhood meeting for this project that was held on April the 18th of this year, and according to the sign-in sheet, there were approximately 11 to 12 people in attendance. This map shows the project boundary. This is also the boundary of the rezoning area. Fayetteville Road runs along the, I guess, the southeast area of this map. Simpkins Road runs along the north of this site, and that road is in between Lake Wheeler Road and Fayetteville Road. And both of those roads are state-maintained roads. This is a Google Street View of the rezoning site looking north with the project site over here. This is also a Google Street View of the rezoning site looking west on Simpkins Road. So the project site is over here. This map shows the existing zoning in this area. The zoning of the entire site is residential 40, R40, and this is a low-density single-family zoning district. This allows stick-built, modular, and double-wide mobile homes. Minimum lot size is 40,000 square feet. And the R40 zoning is mostly in areas that lack public water and sewer. Most of the areas in R40 are developed under private well and septic. To the southeast of the project site across Fayetteville Road, we do have some service business zoning here in red. To the northeast corner of the site, we do have a light industrial business park zone service business. We do have a little business here zone community retail. Service business, the areas in the darker red is a heavy commercial zoning, and that does allow outdoor operations and light industrial. This is a table of zoning cases in this area of Garner. The oldest case on file that we could find was from 2014, and this is for the Swift Creek Station traditional neighborhood development project that was approved. That project has not started construction yet. It is on the east side of 401. The majority of this area on the west side of Fayetteville Road in this immediate area came into our zoning ETJ in the spring of 2017. So the business park that's located here was developed under Wake County. And so this came into our zoning in 2017, and that is represented by this zoning case here, Z17-01. That area was zoned mostly Wake County R30, and we rezoned it to Town of Garner R40, and some areas R20. The most recent case on file was Bannister Properties from 2017, where they did a rezoning from neighborhood office to service business conditional use. And in that project, that came into our ETJ. We rezoned it to neighborhood office, and then they wanted to develop the site, so they had to go through a zoning change, and that was approved. Existing zoning is R40. The proposed zoning is Planned Residential Development Conditional Use District 6. And the Planned Residential Development Zone is a zoning district that allows a mix of housing options. It's a flexible zoning. It allows a density bonus in return for additional landscaping, buffering, and open space. Tracts have to be at least 15 acres in size for a PRD to be permissible. Under this proposal, the proposed density for this site would be around 2.92 units per acre. 420 units total are proposed, and the breakdown is 227 single-family and 193 townhomes. Under the zoning request, several zoning conditions are proposed for this site. The first has to do with use restrictions. Permissible uses will be restricted to only townhomes and single-family detached. The applicant has proposed some site conditions. The first one has to do with the maximum density. The density proposed on the master plan was around 2.9. The maximum density that would be allowed on the site is proposed to be at a cap of around 3.476 units per acre. And that would require a modification to come in separately for that review. Another condition has to do with roll curb and gutter. Condition 5 has to do with rear-loaded townhomes and single-family units, the percentages for those. Condition 6 has to do with the streets that the townhomes front, and also some rear-loaded homes as well. Condition 7 is a request to make a deviation in lot sizes. And I'll just read this quickly. This section requires 60% of all single-family lots to be at least 12,000 square feet, and 40%, meaning 9,000 square feet lot size. That's the base requirement. So they're asking for a deviation from that. A deviation allowing for 3,000 square foot minimum single-family lot sizes and 1,600 square foot townhome lot sizes is proposed. Utilizing smaller lot sizes in townhomes enables this development to provide for a mix of housing types, provide for more affordable housing options, and create more shared open space, trails, and amenities. Condition number 8 has to do with a request for deviation from the setback requirements. The base setback requirements are front 30 foot, rear 20, side 6, with a 6 foot minimum, 15 foot combined, with a corner side of 20. Those are the base requirements. The applicant is requesting a deviation from those as follows: a front setback of 5 feet or 10 feet on a collector street that's rear loaded units, or 20 feet minimum for front loaded units, rear 4 feet or 20 foot minimum for rear load units, or 20 foot minimum for front load units, side 3 foot minimum, 6 foot aggregate. Those are for the single family detached. For the townhome units, the deviations proposed are as follows: front 5 foot or 10 foot on a collector street, rear load units or 20 foot minimum front load units, rear 4 foot or 20-foot minimum for rear load units, or 15-foot minimum for front load units, side 0-foot minimum. Internal units, or 5 feet for end units. Side along public right-of-way, 8-foot minimum, reduced setbacks, enable smaller lot sizes and a mix of home types while still preserving open space for amenities and creating a more walkable community. Condition 9, the front elevation of all residential buildings shall have a minimum of 2 types of materials. As examples, vinyl, hardy plank, shakes, masonry, in addition to required masonry on exposed foundation. Condition 10, front elevation windows that are not set in the masonry trim shall have shutters, additional trim board, or another detail feature. Condition 11, side and rear elevations are not required to have additional materials and can be 100% vinyl materials. Decorative garages may include windows and upgraded materials. Condition 12 has to do with the proposed neighborhood recreation amenity, dealing with the swimming pool and the clubhouse facility. The condition states the amenity shall be completed no later than 18 months following recordation of the first phase plat or prior to recordation of the second phase plat, whichever comes first. Condition 13, all mini parks and trails located within a particular phase must be completed prior to recordation of the final plat for the subsequent phase. All mini parks and development must be completed prior to certificate of occupancy in that phase. Condition 14, a deviation of the maximum cul-de-sac length is also requested. So those are the zoning conditions proposed. You have the use restrictions at the beginning and then about 14 site-specific conditions for the project. The project has about 2,400 feet of frontage on 401, and this chart shows the annual average daily traffic counts. The source is NCDOT for the years 2007 through 2017. The project has about 500 feet of frontage on Simpkins Road, and the NCDOT traffic counts are reported also for 2007 through 2017. And the 2019 traffic counts will be available next summer. So they're taken every odd numbered years, and they're available the following summer and the next even year. Moving to the Garner Forward Plan, we're going to look at the future land use map and also some guiding principles. The future land use map designates a portion of the rezoning site, about 56 acres. It designates it as corridor commercial. For this area, the plan recommends retail, service, and commercial that would be appropriate along a major thoroughfare. The remaining area of the site, about 87.85 acres, the future land use map designates this as low-density residential. This is at a density of less than 2.5 units per acre. And the primary reason for that is there was not any water and sewer out there at the time the map was drafted last year. But that is changing. Moving to the guiding principles of the plan, living spaces. This is covered on page 63 through 68. And staff finds that this rezoning request is in support of the following. And this is on page 63. Garner recognizes that its housing stock is aging and that it could be more diverse to attract younger residents and retain older ones. This rezoning diversifies lot sizes, incorporates alley, rear garage products, and provides exterior maintenance-free choices for owners. Also on page 63, under living spaces, the plan states the following: the younger and older residents, millennials and boomers respectively, share many of the same desires in the living space, proximity to shopping and services, and appreciation for greenways and fun places to gather. This rezoning provides over 2 miles of private off-street trails, as well as pocket parks and a neighborhood park community swimming pool. On page 64 of the plan, it states a higher ratio of dwelling units to linear feet of public streets is an indicator of more revenue support for downstream road maintenance expenses, which is a recommended practice for evaluating housing proposals.
Mr. Bamford, excuse me for interrupting, but the page references that you give, those have to do with a town document, is that right? They're not consistent with the page numbers, obviously, we're looking at in our agenda.
Yes, sir. So
Yeah.
these page numbers are the page numbers for the Garner 4 plan,
Right.
not the page,
Thank you, yeah, just wanted to
not
clarify that.
numbers in your packet. The plan states in greenfield areas, favoring larger master plan tracts helps to maximize private contributions and amenities, which is also a recommended practice, page 64. This rezoning, again, provides over 2 miles of private trails, active and passive recreation amenities, improvements in 5 pocket parks, a community swimming pool, and widening of existing roads. And that would include road improvements along Simpkins and US 401. The plan states on page 65 of the Garner Forward, mixing housing types within a development allows the proposed townhomes and single-family detached homes to live compatibly as they are clustered and share similar design characteristics. This rezoning clusters the townhomes in the Village District near the busier 401 corridor. HOA maintained buffer space is included against neighboring county subdivisions and mobile home parks. So there are some existing neighborhoods in the area. Moving to recreational opportunities in the Garner Forward Plan. This is covered on page 76 to 82 in the plan. And staff finds that this rezoning is in support of the following. In addition to, and the plan states the following: in addition to large projects, small parklets, and small connections between neighborhoods should be priorities to soften perspectives and communicate a human scale for pedestrians, page 76. This rezoning offers sidewalk connections to streets stubbed for connection from adjacent neighborhoods and offers several small pocket parks along internal streets. Page 77, the plan states a stated purpose of the PRD zone is to conserve and preserve natural features and green space, which is a recommended practice for promoting recreational opportunities. Lastly, on page 78, the plan states parks play a vital role in neighborhood life, providing a place for children to play and residents to meet. This includes pocket parks, areas of a quarter acre or less. This rezoning provides for at least 5 standalone pocket parks and 1 neighborhood park. Moving on to the zoning consistency statement. While the requested rezoning from R40 to Planned Residential Development Conditional Use District 6 is not consistent with the future land use map designation of corridor commercial and low-density residential, it does represent a similar blend of density, intensity of use, and is consistent with several of the plan's goals and statements regarding living spaces and recreational opportunities. Staff would recommend funding this request for a planned residential development conditional use district consistent with the Garner Forward Comprehensive Plan, so long as a map amendment is made to the future land use map to redesignate the site from corridor, commercial, and low-density residential to medium-density residential for the entire site. And the medium-density classification recommends a density range between 2.5 to 5 units an acre. So the proposed density around 2.9 and the zoning conditions with a max cap just a little over 3 fits within the density range of the medium density category. So that concludes the rezoning presentation. Stacy will give the presentation on the details of the master plan. I'll be happy to answer any questions. And there may be a public hearing or some comments on the zoning portion before we get to the details of the master plan.
Okay, do we have any expert witnesses further on the rezoning? None?
Those will be part of the
Okay, then.
quasi-judicial master plan, but the applicant may have some comments on the zoning portion.
Mr. Baggett, I guess, is it after we hear the presentation on the rezoning, then we hear from the public? Or we wait until?
Yes, I would hear from the public on the rezoning and also on the master plan.
Okay. Does the applicant wish to speak at this time on the rezoning? So, okay.
Yeah, the applicant has decided they'd rather just address everything at one time, if that's okay with the board. So, I'll proceed with the subdivision plan conformity section, if that's permissible. Again, we are dealing with 143.85 acres. The PRD master plan booklet does ask for up to 500 units. Currently, there's 420 that are exhibited in the master plan book. Of those, you kind of see a breakdown there with the townhomes, 157 being rear-loaded, 70 being front-loaded, whether the garage is in the front or the back, and also 105 rear-load single-family homes and 88 front-loaded single-family homes. You do have the two mixtures of types, the single-family detached residential as well as the townhouse planned in this community. Your minimum lot sizes for townhouses would be 1,600 square feet, and for your single-family detached would be 3,000 square feet. Some of the features of a PRD in general, you do have a 25-foot perimeter setback from the edges, all edges of the development. You do see the setbacks there, which is, since there's 4 different types, it's a little convoluted of a chart, but in the front-loaded, you will see that the setbacks are a little different because of where the garage would sit. So in a front-loaded townhouse or in a single family, it would be set back further from the road to accommodate the driveway in the front. And the reverse would also be true for the rear-loaded. So for townhouse front-loaded, you would have a 20-foot front setback. In the rear-loaded, you would only have a 5 to 10-foot front setback. But then again, that is flip-flop, like you say, with the garage in the back. And that also applies to the single-family front-loaded and rear-loaded as well, with the greater setback being in the front for front-loaded and the greater setback being in the rear for the rear-loaded. The UDO calls for at least a 12% tree coverage, and they will meet that and exceed that. Currently, the plan for the subdivision does call for a minimum of 15% of tree coverage with a target of 20.1% tree coverage. But they are stating a minimum of 15%, which exceeds our 12%. The perimeter buffers, there will be a buffer between the townhouse and adjacent single family of 35 feet in width. And that'll be met with a combination of existing and supplemental material. And again, there's the 25-foot perimeter setback around the project boundaries where they will retain existing vegetation to the max extent possible. Street buffers are not required in this instance, but street trees throughout the subdivision are required, and those are provided approximately every 40 feet on center. This project does have a good deal of open space associated with it. PRD does require a minimum of 25% be kept as open space, and in this case, this George's Landing development is providing 53% open space. The amenities do include a neighborhood park with a clubhouse, a pool, and play equipment also at that neighborhood park. There's also mini parks with benches and play equipment scattered throughout the neighborhood, and a dog park, as well as other passive open space. The site does also have a pedestrian circulation system of sidewalks and trails throughout. The inspections department, together with the fire department, has reviewed and approved this plan. There you see the environmental look there. There's no FEMA designated floodplain on the site, but there are riparian buffers along streams on the site that will impact the site development. This site is subject to stormwater quality regulations for nitrogen and for TSS removal, as well as quantity regulations for detention of the 1, 10, and 25-year storms. There are several stormwater control measures throughout the development as well. The site will be served by City of Raleigh public water and sewer infrastructure. Currently, sewer is located about 4,000 feet downstream of the site. This project would be running that sewer to the site. There's a good amount of information here on roads and sidewalks. The site, as David said, does front both Fayetteville Road and Simpkins Road. The development will widen Fayetteville Road within the existing 150-foot right-of-way, add an additional lane to serve as a right turn lane into the subdivision, and curb, gutter, and sidewalk. The remainder of the widening on 401, which would be north of Swift Creek to the driveway in the plan, including the sidewalk, would be accepted as fee in lieu. Simpkins Road would be widened to half of a collector street to include curb, gutter, and sidewalk, and an additional 7 feet of right-of-way will be dedicated. A collector road will extend from the site, through the site from Fayetteville Road to Simpkins Road, so it'll traverse the whole project. Residents will be served by a network of local streets and alleys, including curb, gutter, and sidewalk on at least one side of each of those. Of the streets, not the alleys, sorry. There you see the overall master plan for the subdivision, and I've pointed out a few things there. The townhouses are down in the purple color, at least it looks purple on my screen anyway, down closer to Fayetteville Road, and the single families are in the orange kind of peach color that you'll see. The neighborhood park with the pool and clubhouse is centrally located. You'll see that. And then several mini parks that are denoted by the circle with the leaf in there that I have pointed out as well. For parking, each dwelling unit is required to have at least 2 parking spaces. Townhomes do have an additional requirement for 1 space for every 4 units for guest parking. And as each phase of this project comes in, we'll drill down on a level and make sure that that parking is there with each phase. Again, lighting, both the street and parking lot lighting for these associated townhome spots will be reviewed for compliance prior to approval of each preliminary plan. A review of the 2018 Garner Forward Transportation Plan identified recommendations for Fayetteville Road, or US 401, to be a 6-lane divided roadway and had no further recommendations for Simpkins Road, what was already recommended in the 2010 Garner Transportation Plan, which is a 3-lane cross-section for minor thoroughfares. Additionally, the 2018 Garner Forward Transportation Plan calls for a public greenway along the north side of Swift Creek, which is nearby, between Lake Benson and Lake Wheeler, with the proposed road improvements, fee in lieu of road improvements, and the incorporation of trails and the greenway that would connect. This project is now proposed may be found in conformity with the 2018 Garner Forward Transportation Plan. A review of the Parks and Rec and Open Space and Greenways Master Plan revealed no additional recommendations in this project area. Therefore, the project may be found in conformance with that master plan. After sufficient review and plan revision, staff does find that this project, as now proposed, conforms to the regulations of the Unified Development Ordinance so long as the following conditions are met. And we do have a few here. Some are pretty standard. Prior to receipt of approved plans, the engineering department inspection fees must be paid. Prior to recordation of the first final plat, a voluntary annexation petition for the entire project shall be filed with the planning department, and documents establishing an HOA and restrictive covenants shall be submitted to the planning director. Prior to issuance of the first building permit, all applicable water and sewer fees must be paid to the City of Raleigh Public Utilities Department, and the Stormwater Program Administrator shall be in receipt of proof of payment for any required nitrogen offset to an approved mitigation bank. Prior to the issuance of each building permit, a fee in lieu of parkland dedication shall be paid. Prior to recordation of the final plat, including the 401 frontage, a fee in lieu of street and sidewalk construction shall be paid to the town. Prior to recordation of the final plat for the second phase or prior to expiration of an 18-month period following the recordation of the first final plat, whichever occurs first, the neighborhood recreation amenity sites shall be completed. The developer shall be responsible for all roadway improvements required by NCDOT, and prior to preliminary plat approval, location of a public greenway along Swift Creek to be approved by staff. The Planning Commission did review this request at their November 18th meeting. By a unanimous vote, the Planning Commission confirms staff's findings that PD MP 1901 George's Landing is in conformity with adopted town plans and policies, and further accepted staff's statements regarding zoning consistency with the Garner Forward Comprehensive Plan as their own, and recommended approval of PDZ 1901 to the Town Council. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have, and the applicants are here as well for questions.
Thank you. I believe we have some here, Ms. Harper, or Mr. Van. Ms. Harper, yeah.
Ms. Harper, on the site plan shows where there'll be connections made to existing streets. I know we had the new street entrance and exit on Simpkins and also 401, but it shows connections to both Conley Drive and to Briarwood Place. Now, the streets that would be built in the subdivision will be built to our town standards. These roads have been there for a while, and what standards were they built to, and will they be narrower or wider than these proposed streets?
I would think they would be. Do you know? Yeah, I would think they are not to current town standard, but I don't have the information on that.
Okay, well, I know they're narrower, so I just wanted it on the record. So the question is then, do we know if Conley Drive and Briarwood Road are maintained by the state?
I do not. I don't know if the engineering department, do you? I think they.
Here's my question is this, my point is we're going to have town developed standard streets, and then on that end where there are proposed 227 townhomes on a road that may be narrower, is narrower, and we don't know the condition of the street, so forth and so on, so who's responsible? So if the state's not responsible and the homeowners are responsible, then we're being asked to approve a subdivision that could put a lot of traffic out there through that street. It may or may not, I don't know. But it looks like it would be, because it could be a cut-through on a street that may not be, you know, it doesn't have the standards of the new roads. But if that's not a state-maintained street, then the residents have to pay for it. And we're put additional traffic on there. I just need to have that question answered. Who's going to have the burden of, you know, the standard of keeping up Briarwood Place and Conley Drive?
And
This is
the
checking
town
it out.
engineer is
Okay, all
taking
right.
a look at
He can
that.
get- He can get back to me, that's fine. I just want to have those questions answered. Go right ahead.
Mr. Matthews?
You mentioned sewer coming up, was it 4,000 feet? Where is that coming from? I know it's always been down 401, but where the railroad crossing is, it could not go through there. So where's that sewer connectivity, water and sewer coming from?
I'm going to let them, because they have a very detailed plan of how they're running that sewer.
I'm sure
I'm
you
gonna
do.
let you. It's quite the project, but, so I'll let them, if.
Any other
If
questions,
they-
Ms. Harper, before we hear from the others?
I have a lot of questions, so they can answer that one first
Okay.
if they want to.
And the reason I ask that, because if water and sewer comes up there, you know, there's a lot of potential development all through there. Will those lines be big enough to be shared down the road with other businesses? And are we looking outside? That's my biggest question. Where's it coming from? And will it be big enough to expand to other areas other than this one development?
Yes, they're working with the city of Raleigh on that, and they can give
Okay.
you a detailed
Just off the
plan
top
about
of it,
that.
it's going to connect down Old Stage somewhere and come up, or what's?
Okay.
Yeah, let them, the engineer talk about that.
A number of meetings with the city of Raleigh on the sewer. Go into it in detail, but to answer your question correctly is, yeah, how it goes in, you have, Raleigh requires that subsidized.
Why don't we,
Gordon, can you,
yeah, why don't we get
we need to
him up
get somebody
here
to
so we
talk
can,
into the
so we can hear.
microphone so that we make sure we get that.
We could use the middle podium.
Gordon,
Yeah.
you can, Gordon.
If you would come to the center podium, sir, we'd appreciate it.
Oh,
I know, but we have a.
Doesn't mean to open a can of worms here. It's just I'm looking down the road because this could be really important to us.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go.
And
You go over there.
real quickly, if Mr. Singleton, those are DOT maintained roads.
Okay.
If you just state your name and address for the record.
Mayor, have all these people been sworn?
I think they have. Were you sworn earlier by the clerk?
Okay, my name is Gordon Polson, and this is Sam Starling right here, and the two of us are the people that own Forsyth Investment that's doing this project. So, first of all, I live at 414 Forsyth Street in Raleigh, North Carolina. Okay, and thank you very much for the planning department, for Jeff and Stacy and David for the help. We've been working on this project for some time, trying to get it to work. And as you know from the property, it has some challenges, but we've worked through that. And so the project team that we have here tonight that's helped us on this is we have the civil engineers, Arnaldo Echeverria and Brad Hart from Withers and Ravenel, and the attorney is Randy Herman from B.A. Hoff Folk, and the transportation engineer is Josh Renke from Ramey Camp. I'll put the next slide up. So, so Sam and I have been looking for a number of years for a project here in Garner that we would like to do and that we felt really good about, because we like to do nice projects that would proud to have our name on over a long period of time. So we were excited when we were able to locate this property here, and let me give you a little background on it. So if you'll notice, one of the things that we like to do is our kind of byline is we like to plan and design neighborhoods that we'd like our family to live in. So if you take a look at this, you notice there's very few really straight streets. So there's curving, and so it gives you more of a community feel. So to have a community that people want to live in and that they consider home is that you have to have something that you really care about. So, and that all happens because you get to meet people. So if you take a look at how this design is there is a lot of ways for people to meet each other between cul-de-sacs, short streets, pocket parks. We have 6 ponds on this property that you'll be able to fish in, walk around, walk your dog around, and most of you have ever had a dog, you know the easiest way to meet your neighbors is to have your dog, right? Go out for a dog walk. So we have that, and then we have an amenity up there at the top, by the top pond up there, and that's going to have a swimming pool, a clubhouse, and if you don't want to walk your dog and you want to go up there and have a brewski after work one day, you can go up there and have that. We have 2.3 miles of walking trails around this development. And in addition, as Stacy mentioned in her presentation, is that we're also going to hook on to the greenway that's going to be the public greenway for all of Garner. So one of the things that's important for communities like this is like Stacy said, we have a number of different products here, and some are rear loaded, some are front loaded. And one of the things that's important, we think, for the rear loaded product is that look at this park that you have right here. This the townhouses actually extend from the top up and from the bottom down, so that if you want to go back the previous, if you take a look at all those greenways in between the townhouses, so in between all the townhouses, they're really going to have, we don't call them parks, but essentially that's what they are going to be. They're going to be parks between all the townhouses, so that if you got kids that want to get out and play, you got the dog that you want to go play Frisbee with, you can go out and do that. And okay, and then, so Stacy went over some of the size of lots, some of the setbacks and stuff like that. And for people that aren't familiar with those kind of products, we thought we'd show you a couple of examples of where they are, because there's a good number of projects all around the triangle that have this kind of product in it, and these are the products that are actually selling some of the best in the triangle right now. Is that myself, I have 4 sons, and what I like in a house, only one of my 4 sons want that kind of stuff. They want something else. They don't want yard work. They want, when they come back from work, they want to be gone. They want to go do stuff. So this, when you do that, though, you also have to balance that with open space. And you can see we've got 53% of the property here is going to be open space and ponds. So you can flip through a couple of those, but just about every area in the triangle has different product like this. These are rear-loaded product, so that you can see right here. The garages are on the back side of these properties, and you access those from an alleyway. What we believe are going to be our price points here is we think the townhouses are going to start around $210,000, and that the single-family house, the kind of the midpoint on those will be 325 to 350 is what we think how they'll end up here. And the other thing that goes along with this is, if you want to go back to the original slide, is that 401, as you know, was just turned into a super street. So that really precludes any real commercial development going here, and the natural commercial development in this area is going to go down on 1010 Road, 1010 and 401. That's where it's all happening down there. So what we've done here is that on 401, as you come down, this is, in essence, is going to be a park that you'll drive by, because we've got almost a half-mile of frontage here on 401, and those townhouses are going to sit back and up on the hill. If you're familiar with the Phillips Horse Farm, there is the Phillips Horse Farm, the barn is up on top of the hill, and that's about where those townhouses sit. So that whole front portion there is all going to be the pond, walkways, greenways, and the driveway into the entrance. I like that. So that's our vision for what we plan here for a community that we think people will be really excited about to live here. And then I'll turn this over to Randy.
Randy Herman, I'm an attorney with the law firm of B.A. Folk. Our office is located at 5000 Center Green Way, Suite 500 in Cary. My part of the presentation is going to be pretty short, and I'm focusing on the ways in which this rezoning fits within the comprehensive plan. As a quick reminder, there are two issues before you in connection with this rezoning. The first one is rezoning to a conditional use district, and then there would be a separate vote to approve a special use permit for the specific master plan that has been presented to you. So the final result would be that we are bound to follow that particular plan, and any amendment to that plan would be an amendment to the special use permit, which would require us to come before you again. The specific comprehensive plan policies that I wanted to highlight, and some of these have already been mentioned by staff. First one is within the housing policy. There's a policy to provide a mix of housing types to meet the demands of changing demographic and complement existing residential uses. So as Gordon mentioned, this is a kind of a project that doesn't really exist at this point in Garner, but is becoming more common throughout the Triangle, which is houses and townhouses on small lots with significant shared common area and shared amenities. We are finding that many younger buyers want to get away from having the kind of yard work associated with traditional subdivisions with larger lots, that they want to have common areas that are maintained by the association and shift some of that burden and have opportunities to get out and meet their neighbors and talk to their neighbors. And so in addition to the fact that, of course, there's diversity of housing types being both detached and townhomes within this community, we also believe it helps create a diversity of housing types within the town of Garner as a whole. People who want to continue to live in neighborhoods with larger lots, those neighborhoods will continue to exist and be there for them. But people who want to live in neighborhoods with smaller lots and larger amenities will have this available to them as well. The second comprehensive plan policy I wanted to highlight is areas for change. So again, the policy is to link the community in the region, to link employment opportunities, educational centers, and recreational areas. And this is specifically focused on the future 540 corridor. So this property is located on 401, about halfway between future 540 and 70. This corridor on 401, we believe eventually is going to be a major growth area for the town, both for residential uses and for commercial uses. and this is part of that process. As Gordon stated, with the change to the super street on 401, we don't believe this particular property is any longer a good one for development for commercial uses, but there are future commercial nodes shown on the future land use map in both north and south of this property, and we believe having these residential units and residential development will support those commercial areas of future commercial growth. Also, although we don't yet know the details for what the sewer widths will be, it is possible that oversizing that sewer will create capacity and allow for commercial growth in this area, which otherwise has been difficult to develop due to the lack of sewer access. The fourth policy I want to highlight is the 40170 overlay district, which is to create areas of attractiveness along Highway 401. As Gordon stated, the whole frontage of this property is going to be maintained as woods with trails, and also the existing farm pond will be maintained and improved. So this will create, we think, a very visually appealing frontage along 401. As 401 from 540 becomes one of the access points into the town, we think this will be a very visually appealing for people coming into the town. And finally, the plan to create recreational opportunities. There will be, as we stated, 4 mini parks, 1 neighborhood park, a dog park, and more than 2 miles of off-site trails leading throughout the neighborhood, which will create obviously significant recreational opportunities and also make the neighborhood very walkable for the residents. I will now turn things over to our engineer, who will talk about some of the more details, technical details of the site plan.
Good evening.
Thank you.
My name's Brad Hart. I'm a professional engineer and senior project manager at Withers Ravenel, 115 McKeenan Drive, Cary. We're the engineering, planning, surveying consultants for the project. And, you know, Arnaldo, who you'll meet in a few minutes, he's a design engineer for the project. So we've been working with Sam and Gordon for better part of a year and a half or so since they first became interested in the property. Before we started putting detailed plans together, Gordon and myself and Arnaldo, he wanted to go show us the site, hadn't set foot on it. I've lived in Fuquay for 23 years, so I've driven past it 1,000 times, but never thought much about what's there. So Arnaldo and I went out there on the site, met with Gordon. He had borrowed his son's Toyota 4Runner, 4-wheel drive, and the Phillipses and Mr. Shape. He introduced us to the landowners, are great folks. And so we toured the site to get a feel for what's back there, and there's a network of trails and some horse trails and 4-wheeler trails. And the more we got back in there, the site is really beautiful, more so even than the picture looks. The ponds, the existing ponds, the 3 sort of up the middle, those are existing ponds. The smaller ones, there's 6 proposed stormwater ponds. So we really started to get a feel for, you know, what areas can be developed. You know, the topography is interesting, things slope off in different areas, what areas could be preserved. Having seen it, we got a lot more excited about it. So we came back, sketched out some rough plans, met with planning staff and with Stacy and Jeff and David, and got a feel for the constraints of the Swift Creek land use management plan and the different zones in there, the different impervious restrictions that are related to those different zones, the densities that are tied to that, heard their, you know, thoughts about extra open space, networks of trails, mixture of housing product. So the plan that's before you this evening is really the product of several rounds of staff review and iteration and working through that, all of which has been very agreeable on both sides. We've also collaborated with many of the builders in this area to sort of come up with the type of product and lot sizes and mix that the market is seeing and that folks are wanting. So we just think it's a great plan, and we hope that you guys will endorse it, and we look forward to moving on with it. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Arnaldo, and he's put the plans together, and he's intimate with more of the detail of the plans, and both of us will be around and be glad to try and answer any questions about the site plan, the development plans, and technical stuff of any nature. Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Arnaldo Echevarria. I reside in 5237 Copain Cove in Fuquay, Varina. So yeah, I'm the, like Brad just said, design engineer for the project. I'm also a professional engineer, and we've gone through tremendous effort of understanding the land and the existing conditions and putting together a plan that actually preserves the beauty of the land to the maximum extent practicable. Just wanted to point out that staff has done a tremendous job with a very detailed presentation to the point where there's very little for me to say at this point, but we're more than ready to answer questions here in a few minutes. A couple things that I would like just to touch on, and along the way, maybe answer some of the questions that have been asked and some that may be coming up. So you may have noticed that the application requests approval for up to 500 units on the site. But the plan currently shows about 420. And Stacy went through the breakdown of those units that are currently shown on the plan. So the maximum of 500 units comes up based on the Swift Creek Land Management Plan. They have buffers of the Swift Creek that basically designates how intense of a development can actually take place. The property is covered by a good amount of those, and there's very specific calculations that go into place, and that's the maximum that we can ever develop the property for. And we want to make sure that we don't exceed that, even though the plan may be showing less, and ultimately will probably be developed with less than 500 units. So one more thing that, like Gordon said, you know, the plan has been put together in a way that groups the developable land with the townhouses, and with the inclusion of the smaller setbacks, smaller lot sizes, we're able to preserve the majority of the natural features, which include 3 existing ponds, some of which you can actually fish and have big fish, which becomes an amenity for the future residents. And we're incorporating a significant amount of trails, over 2 miles, and providing connection for the future Town of Garner Greenway along the Swift Creek, along with that. So those trails will connect the different neighborhood pods and provide ways for the neighbors to walk the site, enjoy the natural features, go fishing, walk the dog, exercise, or simply just enjoy walking along the beautiful woodlands that are in the whole community here. We have been able to accomplish that by proposing a minimum of 50% open space versus the required of 25%. That's a big deal. So in addition to that comes the minimum tree conservation of 15 versus the 12 that's required. Our plan currently actually shows significant more preservation than what we're asking for the minimum. Some of the things that the plan proposes is the extension of the services. So water will be coming off Fayetteville Road and will be extended through the development by way of the public right-of-way. And at the same time, as mentioned earlier, there's a sewer outfall that needs to be constructed for this development to take place. we're looking at potentially a range of about 3.5 miles of sewer that needs to be put in, based on the discussions with the city of Raleigh and the town of Garner. And right now, the connection point would be off Buffalo Road. That's what we're looking at, and it'll go through some properties and right of way that's already in place. So, and those details, like mentioned earlier, are being coordinated with the city at this point. We have several options that have been discussed with them. And in order for that to happen, we're looking at having to install a pump station on the project. That pump station is required to be sized for any upstream properties that could be developed in the future. So what we have seen at this point is that it's going to have capacity for up to 550 units. So our development is located near the upstream end of the sewer basin. So, we have very little in terms of the upstream properties that we will have to be able to provide for. And that's something that we will be definitely taking into account with the design. I think Stacy mentioned this in detail, but we have requirements for total suspended solids, nitrogen removal, and attenuation of the 1, 10, and 25-year storms, which is being accomplished with the implementation of 6 stormwater control measures that are in addition to the existing 3 that are being maintained on the site. And I think it's very important to mention too that because we get the opportunity to come up and close with the property with Gordon and implementing his vision into the design early on, we're able to provide those stormwater control measures in locations that maintain the existing drainage patterns to the maximum extent practicable, in an effort to minimize this disturbance to woodlands and the environmental features of the site. So with that, we already went through some of the UDO requirements and how we're exceeding them on the project. So if you have any specific questions on how we're accomplishing some of those, we're more than welcome to answer. And I think we have a couple slides left that relate to the transportation infrastructure improvements, which is...
Okay, how long will those take? We usually try to recess around 9 to give council members a brief break here, but if that won't take very long, we'll do those, and then we'll probably take a recess.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, that original question I asked, it's a beautiful property. You've gone over everything, not an issue there. Know the Phillips family, good folks down there, known them for years. My daughter used to ride horses over there till she fell one day, and and she gave up horses. But if I understood you, forgive me, a little bit of problem understanding. Is the plan to connect in at Buffalo Road for water and sewer, then run somehow through there over to this property? That's the answer. A question.
Just the sewer. Just the sewer.
Just the sewer.
The water is immediately along the frontage on 401.
So the water's already on 401, just the sewer.
Yes.
So it'll connect somewhere on Buffalo Road through the woods over that way.
Combination of woods and public right of way.
I live on Buffalo Road, so it's kind of caught my curiosity there. Okay.
Okay, I'm sure there are going to be several other questions.
That answered my question, so Mr. Mayor, that's all I needed to know. We're getting it over there, but it will be big enough to service other potential development up and down the 401 corridors.
Okay.
I know we're having a hard time with this question. I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to add in one bigger picture point on it. So, yes, first of all, there are, with regard to the sewer, so the water main, there's a large water main that runs along 401 that will extend directly into the site and up to Simpkins, and that's pretty easy.
Okay.
The sewer is the complicated piece, and So there's really not any sewer infrastructure from the existing pump station at Buffalo Road. It's just off of Buffalo Road, just to the east of it. So the improvements that would be required would involve, there could be numerous versions of a design that could work, and it could be a combination of gravity sewer and pump station and force main from just east of Buffalo Road up and along the creeks and along other near roadways, generally sort of following Swift Creek.
Right.
And then perhaps could come through what's been entertained, part of the project that was, am I saying the name wrong, the Force at Swift Creek or Village at Swift, that was across the street that had been in the works for years, up to the site. And it's probably a 3-mile run. So another option could be having a pump station on the site, like Arnaldo mentioned, down near the southwest corner of the site, that would essentially only serve George's Landing, plus a small area that naturally drained to it, that just simply pumped it all the way to the other side of Buffalo Road into that facility, as well as doing whatever necessary upgrades were needed in that pump station to be able to handle it, as well as numerous other options in between that could be a variation of those, depending on where easements could be obtained, other developers in the region that might be interested in participating. But it could be a solution that could open up other properties between those two not just next to us, but between them. Or it could be a solution that basically would just serve George's Landing and then a small area that's upstream of it, and everything in between.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Council, what's your pleasure? I'm inclined to take a 10-minute recess, and we'll pick back up here. If you want to hear from this gentleman first, we'll do that.
Just a couple questions for this particular sewer question. Just one while he's still here.
I think he'll stay here. There's some people I think anxious to take a bathroom break and some other things, yeah. So why don't we take 10 minutes and we'll come back with questions here, and then I believe there's a slide presentation. Thank you.
I need the paper back.
Oh, yeah.
Josh Ranke with Ramey Kemp and Associates, 5808 Farrington Place, Raleigh, North Carolina, registered professional engineer in the state of North Carolina. I conducted the traffic impact analysis for this site, kind of just really brief, hopefully be proactive and answer some questions and then go through the slide. It is something through the scoping process with DOT and the town. We had 7 study intersections between improvements where we have to mitigate, and also the DOT Reduced Conflict Intersection Project, or Super Street, being politically correct with their newest terminology of what we call it.
It's not Super Street, it's called what now?
It's Reduced Conflict Intersection.
Reduced Conflict Intersection.
Because 100% of the time they reduce conflict. That is a fact.
okay.
People, I think, didn't like Super Street, so that's where we're at now. But yes, the Super Street project. All 7 of these intersections do have improvements either between that project or with our development. It is something, we looked at the build-out year, used a 3% growth. When you saw this ADTs, that's fairly aggressive, so it gives a conservative estimate of traffic in the future, as well as some adjacent developments. Swift Creek and McCullers Walk were also included, and obviously our site. So fairly thorough traffic impact analysis. Key points, and I'm not going to read through them all, but essentially it's showing that we do have multiple intersections that we're looking at doing improvements at. The keys are the turn lanes at the site driveways that are going to be provided, as well as some signal timing adjustments at Simpkins Road and Lake Wheeler. And I guess some other key points that I wanted to sort of bring up is the proximity to 540. That is something that's ideal. It's going to be just a few miles away that you'd have that. That was taken into consideration. Like I said, the big reduced conflict intersection project, that is something that was considered in our analysis as well. One of the things I wanted to be a little proactive, I know it came up earlier. I know people see the way that the road connects through our site and says, well, that's a shortcut to from Simpkins to get onto 401. Kind of with the curvature in the road, and then just the fact that with this project that's going in, some of those delays that you see at US 401 and Simpkins, that's going to be you're turning right off of Simpkins onto 401, so there's no more left turn lane. A lot of those queues go way down. It pumps the traffic through there a little quicker, so it makes it a lot less desirable to kind of go through a meandering, slow road when you're going to have easier access from Simpkins onto 401 to head south. And then conversely, we will have the leftover where you could hang a left in and kind of meander through. I don't think it'll be a big cut through because, once again, you've got this big DOT project coming in along 401 that should alleviate some of those challenges. And yes, sir.
On the improvements on Simpkins at the main entrance, that's, of course, an extended right turn lane, but also that'll have a left end, a left turn lane on that, correct?
Yes, from Simpkins turning into our site driveway, there will be a left turn
On that
lane.
main driveway?
Yes.
On the main, it's not going to be at the Conley and Briarwood. There'll be no improvements there, correct?
It'll be at the one that aligns with McCoy.
Just the main one?
Yes.
And of course, all 401, it's a right in, right out.
401 will have the leftover option. So it's a right in, right out, meaning when you're heading southbound, you can turn right in. You can only turn right out of that driveway. But heading northbound, it's a leftover, which means you can turn left in. And that alleviates some of the traffic that would have to go up to Simpkins otherwise and kind of come in that way. So it's a way of alleviating traffic at more major intersections.
So it's a left in, you go up and turn around?
At the site driveway along 401, it would allow for a left turn lane in there.
Just want to make sure.
Also provide there, you could then make a U-turn there if you were coming along 401 and needed to turn back around for some reason. And once again,
I know with the, what is this, is reduced conflict transportation, or whatever you called it, that, sometimes I know they
Yes.
send people up to do the big U-turn.
yes, and that would.
That's why I was asking.
Yeah, that would be the case when you're exiting, if you wanted to head northbound essentially, and you exited onto 401, you would be forced to head south temporarily before U-turning it around.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought you were saying. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
A quick curiosity question. You
Yes.
said a few miles up to 540 or the rainbow. Do you know more precisely what the distance is essentially? I mean, I don't have to know,
Is
but
it three? It's
3
approximately
miles.
three. Yeah, it's approximately
That's what I was
three.
thinking, between 2 and 3 miles, so 3 miles, yeah. Okay.
And still, I would expect a lot to be traveling up towards Raleigh on 401, even with the 540. But all those things were considered when we came up with and had our assumptions essentially approved and the study reviewed and approved by DOT and the
Okay.
town.
I have a question. On page 7 of the Garner Ford Transportation Plan indicates recommendations for fixed route bus service from downtown Raleigh all the way down 401. Are there any accommodations for bus stops or transportation on this frontage?
I don't think so, not associated, and it's definitely no reductions we considered in the traffic impact analysis.
The 13, how many new residents will be here over time? 1,300, 1,200?
Do you have an?
You have 420 units, up to 500,
Yeah, up to
about 2.5
500.
per.
Well, I guess, we don't really know for sure, but let's say 420 times, 1,200 or times 4, 1,600. So yeah, I think somewhere in the 1,500 range is fair. 1,500.
Having any accommodations whatsoever for transit?
Probably not south. There's no plan for it to continue south at this time. Right now, it would stop at North-South Station, and the likely extension would be east-west, not north-south for BRT.
There will be bus service extending down.
There's express service further down now to Wake Tech, but there's not regular service planned down to this area.
But it is as I page 70, it's indicated that there will be, again, I think all the work, I appreciate that.
Sure.
Growing town is also a moving target, and we're running into issues regarding transportation and making sure that the community's plan. I don't think I did an analysis. I got some numbers. Developments we've approved and under construction in Garner right now, it's about 4,900 new residents. This is another.
Sure.
And making sure that these neighborhoods, you guys have the development view of the development, and it's a beautiful development. But the bird's eye view is it has to integrate into all these other things we're doing. And from the beginning, we have to be, and developers have to be mindful of those things too. So that's just my questions on transportation.
Okay.
And I've got, but.
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. And to be honest with you, during our review of the project, but with the town, so it wasn't a focus. It wasn't something that we were asked to incorporate, but just as a general commentary. So one of the facets of the plan that's not necessarily a transportation impact analysis related improvement, but more of a UDO requirement improvement, we are having to do some widening along a portion of Highway 401 on the frontage, not because NCDOT has any plans for any time in the foreseeable future, but because it's a town ordinance requirement. So particularly on the section of the project that's on the right-hand side of the slide, the northern half from our entrance up, is going to be widened, but for the most part, it's not going to be widened as a through lane that'll go anywhere. It's being widened to meet a town standard, but it's not going to be utilized pavement. So the project would have, frontage with area where, for instance, vehicles or a bus could pull off without blocking traffic, that could probably readily be accommodated inside the widening that's being provided. So I don't think there hadn't been any resistance or desire to not incorporate those elements. It's just been something that hadn't come up as a request or a focus.
And another question on the zoning, and what type of analysis, you mentioned that the super street would reduce the compatibility of this particular property with any type of commercial development. What kind of explain how that is the case, and also did you do any analysis on maintaining that part of the property as some sort of mixed use or commercial? Because we're, again, a moving target. We're trying to not just rely on residential growth and construction and trying to lean more towards commercial revenue. And so if you could speak to the thought process behind that, I'd be interested to hear that.
And we've had some discussions with staff about that early on, and Gordon can maybe speak to that as well, because that was a topic.
So your first question was about the bus. My understanding is BRT is going to be up above the Lowe's. There's a place up. The next one is just going to be down at 1010 and 401, but we're not opposed at all about having a bus stop here. So, but they weren't real receptive of us putting one there. So if it works, I mean, I'm fine with all that. And so early on, going back to the slide that we showed earlier, it had the commercial part of it. We worked at this commercial side. I've done a lot of commercial development, and we worked at, and even worked for apartments. But the super street really precludes retail development. It's just because you need access to get in and out and all that. And apartments, that's changed a lot now. So apartments, what they want to do is they want to go where the retail is, where they can walk to it, everything goes on. So, so we got zero, and we talked to a lot of apartment people about this site, but it was just there was no take.
Mr. Paulson, if you would please use the microphone, get closer and use the microphone when you're speaking. We can't hear you on the recording. Thank you.
And I would add, along those lines, the early conversations about that segment that was designated for commercial, whether it be apartments or other commercial, some of the feedback, not that I was directly involved with, but in conversations with Gordon and potential purchasers and folks involved in partnering on the development, was, usually the commercial centers, what we don't have is frontage directly along a major intersection. So we got a lot of frontage on 401, and then a tiny frontage that's down Simpkins, but not at the corner. So a lot of times the commercial retailers like to be on the corner or at the corner, and we really don't have a major corner.
The other thing that really hurts commercial development, if you take a look at the site plan, you see those blue line streams going everywhere. So you can't move those, and you can't change them around, so it makes it very hard to do any commercial development because you can't get consistency, you can't get across it without crossing a bunch of streams. So it just doesn't work for a commercial site.
Meaning the portion that's in the lower right
on 401.
The reason that we have a network of trails and a park and stuff there is there's two streams coming together and wetlands, and it's really more of a natural area. Really, that pod really needs to be preserved. It can't really be flattened out and graded and built on much. So that's why it's sort of a wide setback from the road that we're making into more of an amenitized park area. It has limited development potential on that strip, which is why it's mostly green.
Okay. Anything else, Danny?
Continue.
Okay.
We do have one final speaker.
All right. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Sherry Phillips, and my husband and I and our family own the Phillips Farm, which is a major segment of this proposed subdivision plan. We live at 6008 Fayetteville Road, Raleigh, NC 27603. And I appreciate you letting me take the opportunity to speak tonight. There were a lot of good questions brought forth, a lot of things that can't be resolved. Somebody has to go first. And George's Landing, my family has lived there for most of the last 4 decades. About 38 years ago, my father-in-law and I fell in love with an absolutely beautiful, rolling topography farm. He looked at it, and it harkened back to his youth in Warsaw growing up on the original Phillips Farm. I looked at it as a mid-20s person and said, this would be an absolutely wonderful place to raise a family. And that's what my husband and I have done for most of the last 38 years. We've raised 4 boys, now 2 granddaughters, who all live on the farm with us. It's been great. It's time to go. And Mr. Paulson just happened to come along at the right time. But in the decision that was made to sell, Mr. Paulson sat down with us at the dining room table, where a lot of things happened in the Phillips family, and we had a lot of discussions, and he seemed to understand from the beginning what this piece of land meant to our family, and the piece that adjoins us at the backside to the Shake family, who had also come looking for a respite from the world. And it was our desire to not have the farm just turned into a bunch of concrete. We wanted other families to enjoy what our family had. The streams, the ponds, the openness of it, the woods, the trails, and have other people's children be able to hunt. And, well, they won't be able to hunt, but they'll be able to fish. Our boys have done a lot of things that other children won't be able to do there. But they will be able to enjoy the open land, having a dog park for people to go meet with other people in their community, to continue a sense of community that is so often lost these days when we get wrapped up in our own little world, but also to have a respite from the world, a quiet place to go, a beautiful place to call home. And this plan, Mr. Paulson and his team worked so diligently on. They met a roadblock and they plowed forth. And they met another roadblock and they plowed forth. They were just determined to try to maintain some of the beauty that we had enjoyed while offering the growth that's coming to Garner a place to come home to. And that's what George's Landing will be, is a quiet place, I hope, for other families to come home to, a place to enjoy the trails and the nature and the ponds and just get away from it all. There are setbacks that are because of streams, and a lot of that means nothing to me except that I know we have a lot of streams and we have a lot of rolling topography. And he has made the best use, I think, of what we've got. Put the homes in, put the townhomes in, and still leave people with something that's hard to find these days. You see some greenery, and you see the ponds, and hopefully other people will be able to enjoy this place and call George's Landing home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else for the applicant? I assume that's all the witnesses. Is that right? Okay, thank you very much.
Can I ask him a question?
Yeah.
I don't know who to ask this. In regards to the product, we're talking about the single family and the townhomes, you included some in the package, the product that you get, that we got, and it shows what some of this product may look like. Question I have, are any of the homes, the townhomes, planned to have sides where there are no windows, it's nothing but a slab of vinyl siding? Is that, if I'm not mistaken, everything I read on here, everything's 3 stories high.
There are, as of today, there are no particular floor plans, house plans. At this moment, there is no one particular builder that said, here's the plan I want to put here. We've talked to groups of builders and consolidated the general types and the features and the architecture and different lot sizes and found commonality between the product they would visualize. And we've combined that to result in the outline of the commitments that were in the guidelines in the PDR booklet that we're confident have put a good degree of commitment towards a quality product, but also leave some flexibility because items like that can be specific from one builder to the next. So in this booklet and in this zoning, it would be allowable, yes, to have a sidewall without windows. But is there a proposal to do that? Is that going to happen? I don't know. I would presume that some would have windows and that some won't. That's just the honest answer.
Not if we had a condition saying that you can't do that.
Right. I'm saying in the format that it is here. Just, yeah.
All right. That's what I need to know. We don't, to me, that's very unattractive. I know it depends on what builders do, but having a 3-story wall of nothing but vinyl siding is not attractive. I'm sorry, it just is not.
Understood. I take no offense.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I just wanted to find that out from a product standpoint. I appreciate it.
Okay. Sure.
Jay, any other questions, this gentleman? Yep. Joe?
And it's kind of a comment and question all at the same time. So we're in the process of doing a 10-year comprehensive Parks and Rec plan right now. We've all sat in on the meetings talking about greenways and connectivity. We're also in the process of initiating UDO rewrite. And I think in the last meeting, Mr. Triesenberg indicated that whatever gets approved is what you guys get to move forward with in perpetuity. If we want to change the definitions of open space and canopy and all this other stuff, it's too late. You guys home free, and that's great. But I would admonish, especially some of the things we heard on this comprehensive plan, and making sure that, again, connectivity of the projects is important to greenway plans and financing those and getting partnerships. And you all are partnering significantly with the sewer piece. That is exceptional. And I guess a few other points, but the take home is it's a great piece of property. We will want to work with you to get it developed. There, in my opinion, and one of many up here, is that we have some other pieces that we need to integrate into the plan. As mentioned, Mr. Hodge said, these are very complicated types of developments. and it's the first time I've seen this one. It may be the first time, they've probably heard of it for a long time. But I think they merit even more scrutiny to make sure it's integrated again into these other longer term plans, whether it be transportation or greenway. And I guess that goes into this question about affordability. Is there any set-asides or notions about long-term affordability or workforce housing? Have the notions ever crossed your minds to integrate those? I mean, they don't have to have, because it's not really part of what we do. Has that ever been an element to this development?
Well, I think so one, I won't try to speak for everyone, so I'll leave it up to Gordon to come in and chime in on that as well. But meanwhile, he feel free anytime, but I'll start maybe just addressing a couple of those things. So I think with regard to the comprehensive plan with densities, transportation, it is my view that we comply with all of that. There was the one, notable discussion about the pod that was envisioned for commercial that we had some discussion on. As far as affordability, I think all of just my experience, I've been at Withers Ravenel and working on land development projects for my whole career for 26 years. I think the developers and the builders that are amongst the likely group that would come in and be the builders on this project, I think all of them like to be able to have offerings at varying price points, and it's stuff that's affordable as they can, because as we all know, the challenge now and around here with escalating land prices and development cost and everything, it's a challenge. So sometimes we literally see not this one, but we literally see projects that we help our clients evaluate where at sometimes the land could be free. It could be given to you by the landowner. But if you were to develop it under the regulations and with the constraints, and maybe it's a difficult site, it would be impossible to make a profit even if you sold homes at the highest price point that the market could bear. So that's the struggle that they fight against. So what they all want to do is to be able to have offerings in the lower price point that can get people in there, and different pods and sections that can ratchet it up so that you got a mixture. And this project, I think, is the same. It's always market driven. There haven't been any, specific targets or goals or affordable housing program guidelines that have been included into this project matrix, other than the analysis that's been done by the builders that we've spoken with and Mr. Polson is that the offerings from the townhomes would be in the low twos, like 220-ish, and in the single family in the low 300s and up. And it seems like today and in the triangle proper, it's almost a challenge for the developers and builders to get to that point almost no matter what the project. So I don't know if that's a good enough answer for you, but I guess that's about all we could have to say about it.
If I can add something to that, addressing affordability, one of the key reasons why we're coming before you and asking for smaller lot sizes and smaller setbacks than would normally be required in a development this size is, number one, to preserve as much open space as we can, but also, number two, to be able to reduce the home prices as much as possible in order to be able to sell units that we believe, first responders and teachers and people of moderate income will be able to afford. There are significant, as you've heard, off-site improvements that go along with this project, development costs, and so in order to be able to offer a product that we believe people can afford, we need to have these, we're asking for these smaller lot sizes. So affordability, although we're not setting any specific targets, it's an inherent part of the project and part of the project design.
Thank you.
So on affordability, Randy and I, outside of this scope, we're very involved with the TCC, the Triangle Community Coalition, and affordability is #1 item for us, and working on it. And affordability is a very difficult thing to kind of tackle and get your hand on, because you have these different things that pull on it. And so if you want to build a townhouse and sell it for $210,000, there's things that go into that really start kind of forcing the issue. So if you have to do a lot of things to the outside that are purely cosmetic in effect, what happens is that the customer, in order to sell for $210,000, because that's a fix, that's what that, if you want to call that affordable, that's where it is. So if you have to do all these things to the outside, that means on the inside, something has to give, right? That means the granite countertops out the window, nice cabinets, they're out the window. So all those things have to happen, and it's real. You can't. First of all, Sam and I are not willing to enter in and plan a development that 20 years from now we're not proud of. So we're not willing to do that. So it's got to look good, and we think we've done a good job with the help of the staff here and our engineers. I think to end up with a nice development that's going to look good, that's going to be what we think is affordable, that the average person can have. Now there's some other communities in the Triangle that it is virtually impossible to build a single family house in them for $400,000. Cannot do it, because there are so many requirements. So affordability is gone out the window. So, my dad was a fireman, so I know what the needs are, so affordability is hard. We're working on it.
I believe we had one more question, comment?
Yeah, I'd just like to add, to inject this into the conversation, I think it's probably not as well known as it should be that Garner already has about 50% or more of our housing stock is workforce housing. So not that we don't need to be aware of that, but we are already doing our part. Other municipalities, we would like them to come along and join that cause as well. There's no doubt that more of it's needed, but we are already over 50% of our housing at the present. So just that's information that should be out there.
And the other thing that really jams this project, to be quite candid about it, is the sewer is going to cost somewhere between $5 and $10 million. So you got to divide $5 or $10 million by 420 houses, and there you go. There goes the granite countertops. So.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the applicant? I think we've covered everybody, is that right? Okay. Any person here to speak in opposition to this application? Seeing none, hearing none. Okay. I believe, Mr. Baggett, before we vote on, is it the rezoning, we have a amendment or at least clarification that needs to be made, is that right?
Yeah, are you ready to close the public hearing?
Excuse me, I am, yes, so I guess I should do that right now. I'm closing. Public hearing is closed.
Yeah, this will be in two actions. One is to approve the rezoning or disapprove it, and the other is to approve or disapprove the master plan. And we have a suggestion for a slight change to the motion that's suggested for the zoning part of this case.
And we would recommend the following language to be added. Find the request partly consistent but reasonable with a simultaneous amendment to the future land use map to medium density residential. So our oversight was to include the map amendment portion to the rezoning motion. So we forgot to include that, so that's what we're adding in. So find partly consistent but reasonable with a simultaneous amendment to the future land use map to medium-density residential.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bamford. Okay, I believe, council, we are ready for a motion initially on the rezoning.
That's the attorney a clarification. Mr. Reagan, any conditions that want to be added cannot be added on the rezoning because they're volunteered by the applicant, but a conditions could be added if the rezoning passes. Conditions can be added to the site plan, master plan, site plan approval, correct?
That is correct. The tricky part is you don't want to approve the rezoning if you think you're not going to approve the site plan, because you have a piece of property rezoned without a site.
Right.
Serious concerns about approval of the site plan. I don't want to hold things up, but you could suggest that the applicant and the planning staff work together on those concerns before you vote on either.
The only concern I have is making sure that we add a condition on where we're not going to have solid sheets of siding.
Another alternative is
multiple breakups of windows, door, whatever.
I understand. The applicant might or might not be prepared to respond to that concern right now.
I asked the applicant to come forward. Can we ask them to come forward and answer that?
I believe we probably could, or ask them to confer further with the planning staff.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. We'll just be at ease for a few minutes.
David?
Ready?
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I address that question?
We'll be back in order.
Thank you. So, after conferring, we would ask, we feel that the majority of the house plans that would be out here would have at least one window on the side. So I believe that our consensus is that the developer would be willing to commit to at least one window on the side of each dwelling.
For multiple windows, but anyway, I'll let the council, other council can weigh in. They may not feel the same way I do.
Mr. Mayor, I like this project. I mean, I've come to like it more since listening. I feel like it's probably 95% there. But I would like the council, I'd like to move that we postpone this vote until the second meeting in January to give more time to meet some small concerns and just address some other things with it, just to give us more time. I'm very confident we'll get there. I think you all have a good start and plan, and confidence to you all too. But there are a few things I'd like to see included, and particularly as the comprehensive Greenway plan, Parks and Rec, and making sure some of these elements are accounted for in congruence with this particular project. That's my motion, is to postpone until the second meeting in January.
Okay, I don't know if it'd be a postponement or a continuation of the hearing, and the semantics maybe.
Well, it is semantics. You're going to postpone any final consideration, but you will also continue the hearing to that date certain, which is January 21?
What would be that date again?
6, or second
21st,
meeting would be
second meeting.
20.
I'd really like to hear what the other things are. We've been working on this for a year and a half. We've already spent almost $1 million because we had to go doing the blue line streams, the Corps of Engineers and everything else. So, and we're already giving you the land for the greenway. So I'd like to know what else there is. I think that's a fair question. The continuation, I don't know about continuation. We've already spent lots of time, lots of meeting here. I mean, we've revised the plans, trying to accommodate everybody, so I'm...
Mr. Mayor?
We know you're from First Lady, Mr. Paulson, but we don't see this till we get it in our agenda package. I know y'all been working on it for a year, but we've been seeing it for 4 or 5 days. That's when we've seen it. Now, I haven't give the planning commission stuff, so I saw it before. But most of us seen it for 4 or 5 days, so we hadn't seen it for a year. So that's the only consideration.
I'm sorry about that. I think we tried to call and get meetings with anybody so we could address any questions somebody had.
But we're not supposed to meet with you once you file the plan. Yeah, we can't meet with you.
Mr. Matthews.
Mr. Mayor, I understand there's a lot going on here, and I think there's been so many things addressed, and this is a new program we're dealing with, and sooner or later we're going to have to wade into it. And I'm looking at the bigger picture down the road. That's why I've asked those questions on sewer and things of that nature. And everybody might not agree with me, but this is a big project. These folks have worked on it, and we probably can pick it apart for months, but to get this project rolling forward, just because we approve it's not going to roll out tomorrow by any stretch of the imaginations, and there's a lot of approval processes and it's got to be done while they're doing this, and from the business side of it and from looking for economic development down the road and just get this project moving, I wouldn't desire to postpone it. I'd like to go ahead and move on forward with it, and we've got plenty of checks and balances already programmed into it that if we need to revisit something, we can do it. And I understand everybody's concerns, and with all due respect, but this is a big project, and there's a lot of time, effort, and dollars involved with it, and I'd like to see us go ahead and move on with the vote on this thing tonight, and that's just my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
I appreciate you saying that, and to your point, it will take about 9 months to a year to solve the sewer issue, and at least $1 million worth of design work.
There's not a specific sewer solution at this time, is that correct?
No, we have had multiple meetings with the city. There are actually 2 alternative routes to go, and another route that goes down by the railroad on the Buffalo family property that goes down along 401. So there's essentially only 2 ways you can do it, but you've got lots of landowners that you have to solve, that you have to work with. They have to come to a mutual understanding to get that resolved. So anytime you deal with sewer, it's a problem.
One of the options is an on-site system, is that correct? One of the solutions is an on-site solution, is that correct?
An on-site?
An on-site solution or a portion of it? None at all on the property? Pump station.
That's a good question. Regularly done. We looked at an on-site solution to do that, and the answer to that is an on-site solution won't work.
Well, and to Mr. Matthews and Mr. Singleton's point, you have been involved with this project for a long time. I've been on council for 2.5 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I've done as much due diligence as I possibly can upon looking at this in days. And as a representative of the 30,000 view of what we need to do in Garner and all these other plans that we have in place, my motion is to give more time to understand and bring these other matters, see how these pieces fit into, because once we approve it, it's approved as is. Now, the other site plan can change, but all your requirements under our UDO, all those things, all the greenway and all that other stuff, it's locked in. And that may be fine, but I would like to make sure I would just like to make sure it's fine.
So if I can make a point on that, there is, as we said, a quasi-judicial element of this approval. So for the same reason that council members did not consider it appropriate to meet with us in advance of the hearing, we also wouldn't be able to meet with you in the time after the hearing. So in the hearing really is the best opportunity for us to bring these issues forward and to discuss them. And so I would respectfully submit that if there are issues, now is really the best possible time to address them.
My further efforts wouldn't be engaging with you all, it'd be engaging with the town and the staff and some of other projects.
So, can I ask you, what are your concerns?
I have some. I need to dive into them probably with staff to address them, to see if they are legitimate concerns. We have we have transportation plans, UDO changes, Parks and Rec approval, 10-year comprehensive plans coming up for a vote in a matter of a few weeks. And we have greenway systems to see how it integrates. I would like to look at it more. That is my motion on the floor for council is to postpone the vote until the second meeting in January.
Okay,
I think we ran it past Parks and Recreation and everybody else, right?
So if I can just clarify, the Greenway issue has been mentioned a few times. I have reviewed the draft Greenway plan, and they are showing in this area a greenway along Swift Creek, much like the previous plans have done. They are incorporating that into their project, so that is satisfied.
well, I believe we've had properly before us a motion. I'm not sure where the motion is going, can't predict that, but so the motion is on the floor. Is there a second to the motion? In the absence of a second, the motion dies, and we're back to a motion on the rezoning, I believe. Is that right, Mr. Attorney?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Dellinger, you understand? Oh, okay. All right, so is council prepared to make a motion on the rezoning? I'm a patient man. I'm going to wait a little while longer. I can't make the motion myself.
Mr. Mayor, I'm ready to make a decision on the motion.
Okay, sure.
And I find PDZ 1909 George's Landing partly consistent but reasonable with the simultaneous amendment to the future land use map to the median density residential, and recommend approval.
Second.
Okay, the motion properly made and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no.
No.
Okay, I don't believe we need to call the roll, right? Okay. So the motion is approved on the rezoning. Now we go to the master site plan. I
Well,
believe it is.
one other thing, do I have to find, based upon what I just stated I move the town staff, the town council accept staff statements regarding zoning consistency with the Garner Ford plan? The second part of that is included as well?
Yes.
Okay. The second part I would like to find consistent with the comprehensive plan and approve. I move that the town council accept staff statements regarding zoning consistency with Garner Ford comprehensive plan, detailed in section 5 of the staff report as our own, and I therefore move forward that the town council adopt ordinance number 2019-4033, approving rezoning request PDZ 19-01 as it is reasonable and the public interest because it will likely allow housing, living, and supporting daycare uses that are attractive to younger families with children as well as older residents looking to maintain private but smaller outdoor spaces, allow adequate buffers and usable open spaces that help to preserve and protect adjacent housing stock, allow the development of an appropriate density of housing in the area in which it is located, allow for the conservation and preservation of natural features and green spaces to promote recreational activities.
A second.
Okay, any discussion, concerns?
This is just the same rezoning motion that we're voting on the second time, right?
I believe that's correct. We're not yet to the
We
second
corrected the
time.
motion, okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure.
This is yeah, if you call it an amendment or a clarification.
Clarification, a
Okay.
corrected motion.
It's fine.
Okay. So, thank you, Mr. Vance. All those in favor of the clarification motion, or, yeah, we'll leave it at that. Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No? Okay, it's noted. So, the motion is approved. Now we're ready to formally vote on the conditional use permit, or at least it's listed here.
Well, I'll give this a try. I move that we approve PDMP 1901 George's Landing, find it consistent with town plans and ordinances, and move that we accept staff statements regarding this plan consistency in section 7 of this report as our own, and find the application meets the 10 permit criteria and 3.14.d, and therefore approve PDMP 1901 George's Landing with 3 standard conditions and 7 site-specific conditions to be listed on the permit and prepared by staff, and 1 additional site-specific condition stating that no side, front, either side or back will be a solid sheet of siding. It'll have a minimum of 1 window to break up the siding.
Second.
Okay. Motion and seconded. Any other questions, comments?
Can
Before we
I
vote?
confirm that the applicant agrees with that condition?
I saw a nod of the head anyway, yeah, okay. All right, motion properly before us. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
Okay, so it is approved and carried. Thank you all for your patience in regards to this. So we're finished, I believe, with that particular action. We will now go to the next item on our agenda, which is under new and old business, and we will hear from Mr. Beck, our finance director.
I hope they put a trail to the racetrack down there too.
Oh, bite your lip.
I doubt that'll happen.
Like they do away with the racetrack.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
You did eloquently on that, sir. I was trying to write it. I couldn't cut my
Okay, Mr. Beck, thank you for your patience, sir.
Yes, sir.
We're ready to hear from you now.
Thank you. I don't think this will take quite as long as the last item.
I hope not.
So bringing to you tonight for your consideration, an opportunity for the town to save some money on its debt service cost. We currently have 12 payments remaining on some Build America bonds that the town took on back in 2010. And we're at the point in the life of that debt where we are able to refinance it. And we can do that and take advantage of more favorable interest rates that are out there now. We've worked with our financial advisors, Davenport and Company. They designed an RFP for us that went out to over 70 banks. We received 12 responses to the RFP. They were most were very competitive rates in the range that we had hoped to see. And we had one bank that offered the best rate. That was Chase Bank. They handled their proposal a little differently than we are accustomed to seeing in North Carolina. They said they could only lock their rate for 48 hours. Typically, we'll see a bank that will hold that rate for 30 to 45 days until we can get through this process of approvals with council, LGC, and then go to closing on the debt. So Chase let us know in their proposal that they would have to come back and give us a revised rate just prior to this meeting. We received that rate yesterday, and it had ticked up slightly from 1.71 to 1.81, but it was still the best rate. We still anticipate savings over the remaining life of this debt to the tune of about $337,000. And that chase rate at the 337 is about $80,000 more in savings than the next lowest rate. So if the council is so inclined to move forward with the refinancing, we have several actions that you need to take tonight, and that would get the process started. We have submitted an application to the LGC. This is all pending LGC approval. They have a meeting January 7th. So it'll come back for further council action at a later meeting, but tonight we're just seeking the permission to move forward. And again, we have several action items for you regarding that.
And I'll let others ask questions. Do I understand, well, I was going to ask Mr. Baggett, do we need to, in essence, vote on each action item separately, I suppose?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you do.
Okay. Okay, well, before we hear a motion, does anybody have a question regarding Mr. Beck's presentation and what we're doing?
Just one comment that I want to, glad that staff has been so proactive on this. This is really exemplary on your part to do this.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Dillinger. Anybody else? Okay, take these one at a time. I'll entertain a motion for action one.
Would you say so moved? We got to be more technical than that.
I would just read it as is, motion to approve the preliminary findings
Find the
resolution.
darn thing
Here it
again. I
is,
just
yeah.
lost it.
Here you go.
Refer to the resolution number 2019-4034.
I move that we vote to approve the preliminary findings resolution.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. So ordered. Okay, action item two, or action two. Motion?
I move we vote to approve the refunding bond order and direct it to be published in the newspaper.
Second? Anybody?
Second.
Okay. Properly made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. And action three.
This would be to select Chase Bank to provide the financing.
At 1.81%, I move that we select Chase Bank to provide the financing as stated by Finance Director.
Second.
Okay, properly made and seconded. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. And that is approved as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beck. I appreciate you helping the town be financially prudent. That's the term I'm looking for. Thank you. Okay, we are at committee reports on our agenda.
But there's the item number 2 that
Excuse
was
me.
moved from the consent
You're
agenda.
right, you're right. I had a note and I forgot about it. So this was the consent item that was pulled earlier at the request of Mr. Dellinger to be added on at this part of the agenda. And do I understand, Mr. Dellinger, that we wanted some discussion now, or maybe we were going to have a discussion at a future date, at a work session?
I think, I don't know if I need a motion, but just to push this back to staff to revise, looking at the general statutes, and the attorney can confirm Article 33, that actually our recordation by video of this can constitute official minutes. And our ordinance says we need to approve them by the next meeting. What we have to sort of do is decide that we want to use those as official, but also find some accessibility issues with having not a full transcription, but notes. But I would move that we push that to staff so that we can revisit this in a more thorough way with staff and bring it again.
Okay, Mr. Town Manager, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, we're fine with that action. I think there's some other alternatives we can look at, and if council's agreeable, we'll look into those and bring that back at a later date and possibly have some discussion about other methods to provide meeting transcript, or well, it wouldn't be a transcript, but proof of meeting and evidence summary of meeting.
Right, okay. We don't need any further action on that. I believe it's been referred properly to the town, yeah. Okay, Anything else on that? We're now at committee reports, and I will defer to council members in just a minute, but I want to pass out a sheet. If it's the mayor's responsibility to appoint committees of this, subcommittees of the council, and also to recommend liaisons to our various advisory committees. I think I've spoken to all council members. I don't think there are any surprises on there, but I'd like to just pass these out, which show the council committees and then also the various advisory boards that you're asked to serve as a liaison on. Does everybody have a copy of that? Thank Ms. Gibson for preparing this and putting it together. In addition to that information, you now have the names and information regarding the various advisory committee members, email addresses, and all those things. So that should be of some help to you.
Mr. Mayor, I need to make a phone correction on mine on the first block. It says 7725876. That's a long discontinued number.
Yes.
369-7657. That's my cell.
369-7657, Mr.
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming this is the old landline number.
Yes, it was. Next to my fax machine.
Okay. All right.
Next to your rotary dial phone, right?
How did you know?
Okay, so I wanted to go ahead and get that to each of you, and thanks for your willingness to serve and participate. If particularly newer members have questions about how some of this comes together, feel free to discuss with me and/or the town manager. I'm sure can give you some good information. Okay, thank you very much.
Mayor, is it possible to get an electronic copy of this? Get an electronic copy?
Yeah, I think town clerk can probably submit that, yeah. You can toss that one out. Yeah. Okay, are there any other committee reports at this time? Hearing none, then manager reports. Mr. Manager.
I have the, just the two standard reports. The Garner info report is in your packet, and then the building and permit report that shows activity over the last month or so. So if there's any questions about any of that.
Okay.
And also, I think we're prepared to have a closed session, and I'll have the attorney help me at the appropriate time to make the citing on that for the real estate item, potential for real estate acquisition.
Okay, and before we do that, though, I'm going to give, we're going to ask council for any reports they want to make. I believe that's at this time. Am I in the right order here? Well, attorney reports. Mr. Attorney, you don't have any public reports? Okay, thanks, sir. Council reports, let's see, I'll start right down here with Mr. Matthews.
A couple items, Mr. Mayor, thank you. And a lot of these will probably kind of go over here to our illustrious town manager over here. And but as processing in, and we talking with the police and the fire and different departments, got a chance to get out and meet everybody and just kind of get to know them a little bit. And a couple of concerns, and one was mine because I had to deal with this back when I was a county commissioner, and when the tornadoes come in. Our Emergency Operations Center, I know originally was at the police department, that's being moved over here. There are things on a cart. A lot of people, as I'm questioning, don't know how to operate it or what it boils down to. They're going to be requesting, we need a Emergency Operations Center training, because I know, like with the fire department, a lot of them don't know what's on the cart. Do we have TVs?
What's on the, I don't understand, on the what?
On there's supposedly a movable cart that rolls around. It's got all this stuff on it. I've not seen it, but none of them know anything about it. And if the balloon went up tomorrow, what are we going to do? And that happened at county level when I was a chairman. When the tornadoes went through, we had all the TVs in the room, but all of them were snowy at 2 o'clock in the morning because the cable got cut down by a tree. And if it had a set of rabbit ears, we could let every one of those TVs up. But the Emergency Operations Center, I think we really need to get a handle on that quickly and get those people involved, which is on its town staff plus police and rescue. And
right, it's, well, we can have further discussion about it, but it's the police-run Emergency Operations Center, and we invite other entities in there, but we have staff that mans it. But so I'm not familiar with that particular item, but I'm open to having a discussion about it.
Okay.
and trying to figure that out.
Because I know fire department and EMS is part of that with that, and not throwing anybody on the bus, it's something that there's issues there that everybody's not on board with it, I guess is my
I
concern.
think the last time we had something going on, there was a command center set up at the fire, the administrative offices at the fire department. And everybody reported in and out of there.
Right.
That may be just a very simple way of doing it.
Well, during the last hurricane event, we did have Emergency Operations Center set up at the police department in the training room, and we
Right.
did invite other personnel from other entities as was appropriate.
I'm just curious, my
I
concern
didn't hear of any
is
concerns,
everybody
but-
trained to know what they're doing? You know,
We'll look into
it might
that.
be, a practice run might be quite appropriate. Let me just put it that way. Now, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, just I like to put out fires before they start. Secondly, when Mr. Dillinger and I and the mayor and Mr. Vance, y'all did a great briefing for us on all the departments, but the fire department, we didn't get an update on them as to what their plans were, what's going on. I'd like to see if we could schedule that at a time that'd be workable for everybody to have Chief Poole or wherever his representatives come in and give us an update on all of that. And so if we could get that worked in on schedule somewhere, Rodney, I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
And fire department, Station 5 update. Well, I know with the new 540 Beltline, they turned up land already, and that's going to be a crucial location down there. I know we're kicking around something that might be moved up. If we could get an update on that, that would be great. I don't think it can be pushed off 2 or 3 years. We need to be looking at that right now. And I know, John, you're working on that project, or Matt, I'm not sure who.
Several of us are. We're all got different pieces we're working on, and we've got it in the CIP and as a potential bond project and all those different things, but we can talk about it further.
I guess my concern is, especially with that new southern loop going through, this thing needs to be pushed up rather than put off, and because right now, that's a crucial location down there at McCullough's Crossroads, and Station 2 has to be one to respond to it. If it's 5 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to get there, and it's just going to get worse.
The reasons on the CIP, Phil, is we don't have $5 to $7 million to pay for a fire station.
Okay.
And I would suggest that you would meet with the managers, the management team, let them update you on that. How's that?
Well, that's
the thing
exactly what I was
that's what you need
alluding
to
to earlier, get an update on everything.
Get an update on that. Now,
Okay.
let me tell you, because that's complicated with at least 2 parties, a town and the county, and one day another town may be a partner in that project too. So they can update you on that. It's
So is this the update just for you or the whole council, or?
Yeah,
That's something, I know Mr. Dillinger, we're the new guys on it, we didn't get that presentation, so I'm sure he'd like to hear it too.
Just let me know who wants to be part of that, because that'll dictate what type of meeting it is, whether, we need to have a public meeting or whatever on it, or if we can just sit down with you individually and talk about some
I mean,
things.
individually.
Or the two of you,
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be council members interested in
that's
that?
fine.
Okay, so if not,
Okay.
Mr. Matthews and Mr. Dellinger will be you okay?
Or an
Okay.
afternoon or something,
All right.
it won't take that long.
So those 2 council members, Mr. Mann.
And last but not least, at the Lake Benson crossing where they cross over there going to White Deer over to Lake Benson, vice versa, we've got some signage there, but I've seen too many people almost get hit there, not knowing what to do. And some things I've seen, just as an idea, I know if you go to Fuquay, certain key crossings, they've got a piece right in the middle. I've got a picture of it. It says, stop for pedestrians and cross, but it's also something to slow people down a little bit. They've got 3 or 4.
2 pieces of concrete just like that, and it's got signs noted, the pedestrians have right of way. Yes, I was in past one today, and
Yeah.
yes, you're correct.
Yeah, and
I
Holly
agree with you
Springs has
100%.
them, Angier has
Yes.
them, and it slows you down, and it's portable. You just
Well, no, this is actually,
it sits in between the two.
This is
yeah.
actually 2 concrete,
Yeah.
little small concrete pork chops, not pork chops, 2 little small triangles. And it put the sign, that way they can walk between it. The gentleman was killed a couple weeks ago at the one on Sunnybrook. They have that there. I read about that tonight coming in where the gentleman was hit. but they have that there. That's dark at night, and that's one of the reasons, I think one of the issues they had, because at the time of day it happened, but what it does is it makes you slow down because it has a sign pedestrians have right of way.
Right. Well, and I've gotten an email, I was gonna ask Mr. Johnson about this, a similar concern.
Yeah.
Of course, the ones you're talking about, are those on like 4 lanes?
It's 2 lanes, yeah. 2 lane road.
Well, I'm just talking about, it seems like it's a little more awkward. Double lane.
No, because
We're talking about timber, right?
out there, it widens anyhow. It widens.
He's talking about on Buffalo at, where the Greenway
Oh,
crosses.
excuse me,
Yeah, right
okay, I
there.
thought you were talking about coming out
Oh,
of the
no, no,
Greenway.
it's just right there.
Yes,
Just at one
okay,
location.
right, okay, that's good.
Do
Okay,
that, would make a lot of people happy and maybe save a life one day.
you've got that right, yeah.
And that's, I'll
Yeah,
be
that-
quiet and eager to wait for. our
We'll look
meeting.
into that. That's a DOT road, so we have to go through them to get any
Okay.
permission to do any
Okay.
pedestrian calming or traffic calming, but
Yeah.
we'll,
But the other towns
we'll
have it,
address
so it
that.
shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah,
I
we'll
wouldn't-
address
I
it.
wouldn't-
Well, it's site-specific, but we'll look into it.
Okay.
We'll talk to them about it.
While we're on that, and I don't want to preempt Gray, but, yeah, actually, the inquiry I had, any chance of getting a crosswalk at Buckingham and Timber, so I think.
Oh, yeah, that's a
Greenway there.
bad one.
It says people trying to cross to the walking trail have a heck of a time getting across. The current lights are barely visible in the daylight. I know we have.
That's over on
those
Timber
signs,
Drive.
But we got the flashing lights there where they can mash and the lights will flash.
That's what I understand, but.
Not
I don't
not
know
at
if-
Buckingham and Timber.
It's the Greenway crossing down
That's
this,
the
on
Greenway
Timber Drive,
crossing.
down
Yeah.
below Coachman, down that way.
Right.
This is up by Buckingham. That's where the marked signs are.
We didn't see them when I rode by there the other day.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be there just like they are at Buffalo and Amesboro. There's 2 there,
Okay.
and there's supposed to be 1 at Timber that way.
And with that crossing, that crossing is very challenging, and really, the ultimate goal there is when we finish the sidewalk project that's going to connect the sidewalk on that side of Timber Drive, we hope that will reduce a lot of the need to cross over there. But
Yeah.
there's really not much more you can do at that crossing. The best option is for us to try to reduce the number of people who are attempting to cross there.
People are coming from that neighborhood across the road.
The bad thing
Gotta
is
cross
that
to get
the
there.
Greenway
Right,
dumps
but
out
that-
onto Timber Drive.
And
That was poor planning.
honestly, we're not sure how DOT ever allowed that crossing to be there, because it's not one that I think would meet today's scrutiny.
That's
And
what
so
I wondered.
the very best we feel like we can do right now is to have the flashing signs that were added there. And then for all the people that don't live right in that neighborhood, try to get them a safe way on the other side of the street.
Yeah. Ms. Singleton, to you, any reports?
Yes, I have 2 items. There's the planning staff is left. I like something we can discuss and we can stick it on a future agenda, work session agenda. This item I brought up about these solid sides on these buildings. I mean, one reason that one of the subdivisions proposed to us a while back we voted against was for that very reason. And we need to make sure, whether we put it in our ordinance, our UDO, we need to discourage these, a 3-story building with nothing but siding on it, that's not cutting it, I'm sorry.
And not a peephole window either.
No, I had to get by with what we could tonight, but that's not appropriate.
Yeah.
They can't do no better than that, put in 2 windows and they don't need to be coming.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course, we had a speaker tonight, Mr. Pearson, in regards to cancellation of our parade, but I think others on here may speak to this also. But we're certainly disappointed that we did not have our parade. But we're going to have a parade next year. And I don't think I need to make a motion to ask for a vote on here because I think it's pretty unanimous. So I won't do that unless staff wants me to. We need to direct staff to work, develop a plan, work with other towns, specifically maybe Wake Forest, because I like one of the way things that they described, the logistics of the issue as that were at hand. But it's a complex issue, but the department that would have to do the most work, of course, would be police. However, there's a couple legal matters. In talking about this issue, we adopted a offensive symbol ordinance. I read a comment by an attorney after Wake Forest Council there that says you cannot do that. That won't stand in law court. But our attorney, Mr. Anderson, who's now retired, told us it would. And then we were told if it's a town parade, you have to allow everyone, and if it's someone else, they don't have to. And Wake Forest attorney says, yes, you do. Yeah. So this is a legal issue that's far beyond us. So we're going to have to get this, let somebody sue us. If it has to get settled in court, it has to get settled in court. We cannot, it's not going to, Our staff cannot make that decision, we cannot make that decision. That's gotta
First
go to,
Amendment.
it's gotta go to the court of law and let them say. But we're gonna have a parade next year, so, not to start it this week or next week, but start the first of the year. Want, the appropriate departments to start working together with other towns. And, because other towns had the Sons of the Confederacy in their parade, east of us.
Well-
Saying they did, and so that's an issue, and then, you know, that issue is beyond Garner. As we can see all the issues that they're having with this settlement with the Board of Governors and the Sons, that's a beyond Garner issue. But having a parade is a Garner issue, and we can plan a parade, plain and simple. Again, I think Mr. Matthews, Ms. Behringer, Mr. Vance, Mr. Dellinger all agree, and I think the mayor does too. So I won't speak for the mayor, but
Well-
we need to work on that, and that's something we're gonna have next year, because it was disappointing what we didn't have, the Friday night lights, Light Up Main, I'm sorry, not Friday Night Lights.
It's a different,
TV show.
it's a movie.
But it was lights on Friday night.
There were.
The Light Up Main was nice, and appreciate the work, and it'll be nice. I'm assuming Direction will be open by next Christmas. But we can use that also. We're happy to be open by next Christmas. They're making progress. So anyway, I think Mr. Vance has some comments on that. I'll stop there because others may have comments too.
Okay. Well, since you mentioned my name, and again, I'll defer to others, your new mayor certainly is interested in seeing what we can do, reasonable basis to reinstitute the parade. I've had actually a couple of preliminary meetings with the town manager and a couple of other staff people. And I hope to have one with the mayor or two of Wake County, and a similar discussion. So at any rate, yeah. Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, we'll go this way.
Okay. I attended the breakfast with the Triangle Community Coalition week before last, and we had an update on DOT projects and where they are and are not. Joey Hopkins did an excellent job, as usual, explaining the whats and the whys and the therefores. We didn't hear that any of our projects were added back, but there was explanation about why the delays. One thing that I heard that I was really encouraged about was that as they improve number 1 north, they're going to take out the stoplights, and so travel with their plan, the stoplights won't be there to impede traffic, and travel won't take so long to get in and out. That's in the future, but it was good, and that report is online on the TCC site, if anybody would like to read it. It was an excellent report. I'm not going to hound anybody about the Christmas tour of homes anymore. It's over. It was very successful. Thank you for your good thoughts. And Mr. Johnson, have you had time to check into the lighting at Evolve on Highway 50? The apartment complex that there's practically no lighting and a minuscule sign out there?
Referring to street lighting, correct? Not
Correct.
signalized
Yeah.
intersections.
Mhm.
I believe they have, I'll have to check on that one. I'm not really certain where that stands.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's
I'll
all
look
right.
into it, though.
It was just a couple of days ago.
Sure.
That's all.
Okay, Mr. Vance.
Yes, to dovetail with what Councilman Singleton said, I would like to support what has been mentioned in reference to the what happened with the Christmas parade this month. And I would like to recommend also that the town staff review what transpired relative to the parade, provide an after actions report, and develop a timeline to be provided to the council in a meeting in January with the goal of providing possible courses of actions to be further developed for our consideration. I'd like to just add that in there. And Mr. Johnson, in reference to the rec center, can you give us a quick update on that, please? I see a lot of activity going on.
Yes, sir. I'm going to reference some of my notes that I took from our last update with the contractor. So there's been quite a bit of work going on, both around the site as well as in the building. For the most part, Montague Street has now been paved up to the final lift, or just shy of the final lift. Most of the parking lot signage, concrete bumpers, and pavement markings have been done around the recreation site. Along Main Street, the contractor has come in to make some of the repairs along the frontage. You may have saw some of the plants come out temporarily. They've put in waterproofing along the front of the building there where we had found some leaks through the walls in the front. They've also installed most of the sock drain that's going to go along the front of the building to sort of help with some of those issues that we had. So they're hopefully going to finish that next week. Town's landscape contractor actually came in this week and planted street trees along Main Street, as well as along some of the corner lot there in Purvis Street. The biggest thing that they've been dealing with this last week has been working along Highway 70 in the median. There's been a lot of undercut because of the time of year and the fact that the median is where an existing swale is at today, right where the future turn lane is going to go. So everywhere that they've been going through to get ready for paving, they've, based on soils tech testing, they've had to remove up to 2 feet of soil. They were replacing it with some stone to get ready for proof rolling. They're hopefully, looks right now like the rest of this week after today's rain moves out, they should be able to continue that work and get most of that area paved by the end of this week to the base layer. Then concrete crews will be coming in to install curb and gutter along that turn lane and possibly also westbound in the median. So there'll be curb on both sides of the median, and then they come back later with a cap between those two curb lines. So right now, we're hoping there is going to be a delay with the fact that you cannot have a lane closure along US 70 during the week of Christmas and New Year's. So after the 20th, they're going to have to stop working on the median because of those lane closure restrictions for the holidays, and they will get back on there right after New Year's. So they can still work along Montague, they can work on the building and other areas, they just can't work on US 70, and they can work on the shoulders, they just can't do a lane closure. And I've already talked to DOT, and they are pretty strict about that. They've also got the pond that's at the corner of Montague and 70, that they're getting ready to start converting that from an erosion control basin to the final wet pond that it's supposed to be, which means they'll be coming out there with a long reach excavator, digging out some of the sediment that's accumulated there, getting it to final grade, making any final adjustments on the riser that's in the pond, and get it ready for final plantings and so forth. They're also going to be doing the same repair work on the pond over at GPAC. So they're going to remove 12 inches of the filter media, see if that solves the drainage issue that we've had from clogging. If that does not solve the problem, then they're going to remove and replace all the filter media down to the stone. So they're going to sort of take a test and see if that initial foot of that filter media is the cause. And so that work will begin probably right around the holidays as well. In the building, they've completed most of the final inspections. The elevator, the plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and fire alarms tests have been done. As far as I know, I've not heard of any major complications with that. I think they've got a lot of punch list items in those areas before final approvals are provided, but things are going well. Most of all the interior painting is completed. The architect walked the building with the contractor after our meeting last week, and they've begun to start to decrease the number of punch list items that have been outstanding for quite some time, so they're making progress there. But I think after Christmas holiday, the architect will come back once all the punch lists are done to do a final walkthrough on the building. The roofer, that was one of the biggest items that we still had outstanding, was to install the soffit around the perimeter of the building. That work is supposed to start tomorrow. So they're supposed to be on site in the morning. I think that's just about everything that I can think of off the top of my head.
Question, Chris.
Yeah.
Was the issue with the pond at the GPAC, was that something that unforeseen, or was that just lack of diligence on their part to begin with?
A lot of that happened before I started, but my understanding is they converted that pond, and afterwards there were still some areas upstream that had not been 100% stabilized, and they were doing some work around there in the parking lot, and there was some, there might have been a blowout in one corner of the parking lot. A lot of sediment accumulated inside that basin after the filter media was installed.
Well, the good news is it's going to get fixed, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep. You satisfied, Mr. Vance?
That's right.
Mr. Dellinger,
you, sir.
your turn.
Aha,
Go.
list, always have a list. I'll be quick. First, most everybody was out there for the depot move this past weekend. It was amazing and just a testament to all the work for so many people over so many years. Public Works was out there, Garner Police. Rick and Adam did a great job covering the event. I saw coverage on NBC 17 later that night, so we got good coverage on that. And talking with John, thought it might be a good idea for the town to send a thank you letter to Norfolk Southern and NC Railroad, signed by, the full council, appreciating their support and financial support, and continue to nurture that relationship. So I don't know whose inbox that goes into, but went to the Garner Fire and Rescue's Ladies Appreciation. If you've not been to that event, that was a great event. They got great coverage of their visit to the J.C. Byrne unit. I saw that on WRL as well. Having talked with Phil and Buck mentioned it on his last day, but starting to look at have staff sort of prepare a couple of logical scenarios for ETJ expansion, what makes sense with regards to our growth plans. Maybe a work session next month, kind of give us an overview of that whole process and timeline, and then maybe some very, very preliminary expansions that would make sense with growth and our need to, just it also help inform us on what activities going on in other jurisdictions around us and where we need to prioritize. Maybe also at the next work session, one of the things that came up a lot when I was canvassing in neighborhoods was the increase in cut-throughs through neighborhoods, and not just the fact that they're cut-throughs, but the speed of them. Cut-throughs is something that's going to be consistent and continue to increase as we get more and more traffic on these main thoroughfares. And I've seen at least 2 accounts on Nextdoor over the past year of pets being run over by speeding cars. And the last thing we want is some kid out there in the street. I live in Forest Hills. I've seen cut-throughs increase. So I don't know preliminary talk about devices and costs, and then figuring out what would be the best process or figuring the location. But I think as an expense, it's something that we need to invest in, because I don't think it's a problem that's going to go away any faster than we can build the roads. So I'd like to see that sort of on maybe the work session, maybe the next work session. And as for the parade, I think we all sort of have a very similar belief that we need to work towards figuring out a solution to that. I think there's some other legal things we could try and address. But I think we're all, as a community, sort of committed to doing our best to make sure that we continue the tradition. How we do it is sort of what we need to come to the conclusion on. But I think that we're all sort of on the same boat, that we want to put forth our best effort as a community to make sure we have something next year. That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you much, Mr. Dellinger. And
Can I add one item?
Go ahead.
Mr. Dellinger mentioned the caboose in the depot, where the caboose beside it was a monument that the veterans, that the VFW put many years ago in a flagpole. And we talked about this, I remember, a few years ago about relocating that. I hope that we'll confer and get their approval. We can take that right across the street and put it at the senior center, take the flagpole, and then we can have an American flag and a North Carolina flag. So I'm hoping we'll consider doing that.
Yeah, I had some discussions with Public Works about that. We're still pursuing putting the monument across at the senior center. They already have a flagpole, so we would probably just take that flagpole down and put it in storage or use it somewhere else where there is, but there's already one there.
I know, but you can put a North Carolina flag there too.
Yeah. So we would look at those options.
Gotcha. Anyway, I just think we need to get that. I know the railroad wants things off their, well, I can't say they're right away since it goes all the way across the street, but anyway, you know what I mean, right directly across the track. So discuss it with Public Works, that's good.
okay, consistent with our agenda, I am going to recommend, or order, I guess, pursuant to NC General Statute 143-318, Mr. Attorney, you can cite those, .11A3, that we go into closed session and consult with the town attorney regarding litigation. And do I need to give the other site too, I guess?
Yes.
Okay. And NC General Statutes 143-318.11A5 to discuss possible real estate acquisition in the town's negotiating position regarding such real estate.
That's a motion.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. We're in closed session. Okay. Okay, I call the council back into open session. We went into closed session to confer with an attorney. I've been a little remiss in not announcing that the town has engaged the services of Mr. Fred Baggett as our interim attorney on the resignation of Mr. Bill Anderson, and he's been working with us now for several weeks. Comes with a great deal of experience. I don't have his bio in front of me, but we're very pleased to have him as our legal counsel at this time. So we conferred with the attorney regarding some litigation, and we also have a resolution that the council wants to vote on at this time. I recognize Mr. Singleton.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt Resolution 2019-2403, resolution of intent to acquire certain right-of-way and easements.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion by council? Questions? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And there is no opposition. Thank you, council. Unless there's any further business to come before this council, entertain a motion to adjourn. So move.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Thank you. Thank you all.